pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The first order of business tonight is more for the board here. Is after each annual election, we reorganize the board, select the chairman. I just want to say at the outset that I don't wish to be chairman this coming year. In the past, they kind of rotated around. At one point, it was the senior members stayed on as chairman as long as they wanted, I guess. But a while back, it changed over for a couple of years, and then we selected a new chairman. So, with that said, I've enjoyed being chairman. No disgruntled or anything like that. But I think it's a better policy every couple of years to change chairman. So. With that said, I'd like to nominate Matt as to be the next chairman of the board.
Second.
And any discussion or no? Okay, with that, I'll call for a vote in favor.
Aye.
Aye. There you go.
Can we have this start after the end of this meeting?
What?
Can we have this start after the end of this meeting? Just so I can
Go.
continue to watch
You
you
can
and
take
just make
over.
sure I use the
Usually-
right words next week.
Usually you take over as soon as it's.
I apologize if that's how it comes off.
Finish the nominations.
All right, then,
What?
So do we need to finish the nominations, so?
yeah, either, somebody wanna nominate somebody for vice chair?
Doesn't matter to me what I do.
Does somebody have a preference of what role they would like to take on moving forward for a
We
year?
just usually just do the clerk.
Okay.
Right. Nominate Greg to be clerk of the board.
Okay. I'll second that.
In favor?
Aye.
There we go.
You can go to jail for us.
There we go.
Yeah.
It's all right with me.
Give you one more year at that, and then you
Peace
can.
and quiet, I don't mind that, it's okay.
All right.
Can you just do a nomination, do a vice chair?
I nominate Charlie for vice chair.
Thank you.
I second that. Any discussion? All right. Call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Again, it's become new standard. We'd like to open up the meeting for public comment. Does anybody have anything to add? Would like to speak up about it this time? No public comments today? Okay. We have meeting minutes. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the meeting minutes for September 5th, 2017, September 18th, 2017, April 2nd, 2018?
I'll make a motion, we approve the minutes of September 5th, 2017, September 18th, 2017, and April the 2nd, 2018.
Second the motion?
Any discussion? Call for vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We have executive session minutes not to be released regarding an ongoing legal issue. I would like to hold off on accepting these at this time, or going through that process, table that for another meeting.
I don't even see a copy of them in my.
You recuse yourself from those, so
Oh, then I wouldn't have a copy.
Right.
Fair enough.
I guess we'll start with the meeting with the Board of Health, if they would like to come on up, or not, that's your call. discuss the transfer station, the RFP. Lay the groundwork. We sent out, we requested proposals for management of the transfer station for 1-year term with 2 additional years that can be chosen by the town. Board of Health is involved with the regulations of it, so their input is extremely important to the process, so we've invited them to come in so that the 2 boards together can make an approval on or not of the RFP. I don't want to speak for the whole board. Andrew, if you would like to just present whatever you have and we can move forward.
Yeah, so this is basically a 1-year contract with 2-year options, as you had said, Matt. The current terms of the agreement are basically just the increase in the in the annual permit fees by $5 over the current year. This is consistent with the original 5-year proposal that they had put together 3 years ago. And then the only other change between this agreement and the other one is that there's some slight increases with the bulk rates, because they noticed they were running a deficit on some of the bulk rates. I believe that they had just sharpened the pencil a little bit on getting the rate up the term down. So that's pretty much the contract in a nutshell. I don't know if you guys have any specific questions on that.
Anybody have anything have we all had a chance to review what was sent out? Do you have any questions on this particular contract?
Just, my concerns originally when this went out was that the 58-page document was very cumbersome. I was concerned as to why we weren't getting more responses back to people willing to look into this. And it did raise more concern for myself when we were at the meeting, when I was having the discussion with his qualifications of the consultant to find out that he used to write contracts for solid waste solutions. And it seemed too coincidental that's the only company that really liked it. But at this point, we don't have a lot of time to look into it any further than that. I won't, as I said before, I won't stand in the way of it. At this point, we need the year to try to get ready for us to look into it on our own measure. But I did have concern. I did express them to Andrew before about that, but I wasn't sure if he really had any relationship with Solid Waste Solutions before. To have him confirm that he had a relationship with them, a business relationship, specifically in contracts, it was a concern to me. And I don't know to what end that's been vetted with you guys, if he's made any declaration before the other night that he wrote them contracts. But it was, a little under, and that's the kind of thing that you'd think would be disclosed of. Maybe he did disclose it and I don't know about it, I don't know, but that's the kind of thing you'd expect to be disclosed up front. That they, literally wrote contracts for the company that's getting awarded the contract. And they were pushing very hard for them to get that contract and scare us off of doing it ourselves and other things. I was uncomfortable with it, so I will abstain from voting on this, but I won't object in any other manner than just making my concerns known.
Understood. We'll just make sure that's on the record. With that, is there any further discussion? Anybody else have anything else they'd like to ask?
They're the only ones that bid on it. And another company looked at it and they didn't wanna touch nothing, so that's it.
So,
Well, I will add that we did have a site visit after the release of the solid waste contract. There was one other bidder that did show up. We did receive some correspondence from them when they looked it over. And their primary concern is why they weren't going to bid on it was because they felt the capital investment versus the length of the contract was not sufficient for the amount that they would have to put into it. Mainly that was because of the issue with the compactors. They didn't want to basically pay the money to come in and put in their own compactors for us to terminate the contract in 1 year. And that was why that company did not bid on it.
So, I propose we'll just have a vote. Rather than splitting it between boards, we'll just it'll just be a yay or nay, and we'll count each and then identify it separately in the minutes. Somebody would like to make a motion to accept the,
Did they already
Proposal.
vote at their meeting?
They couldn't if they weren't posted for it.
No, we have to
It-
do
it,
the two boards.
Okay.
They were voting to accept it, as I understood at the meeting, to receive it, but they weren't making a finding on it. They weren't posted to do that, so
So
we'll do that
I'll make
tonight.
a motion to accept the contract we got from Solid Waste Solutions for the year, and then we'll go from there after that. All in favor? Aye.
aye, so right now it's 4-0 with one abstaining and one missing between the two boards. So, issue's done, RFP. So, now that's done,
That
I'd like
extends
to,
us for the year.
while the Board of Health is here, bring in a quick little thing that I believe Andrew brought up regarding the Transfer Station Study Committee that he's recommending.
Yeah, so I'm just recommending that, you know, as we move forward, going into, you know, looking at it, you know, whether or not running it as a municipal operation, whether or not the boards want to jointly appoint a study committee to basically study this issue and kind of come back with a report as far as how it would operate, how would the transition go, and whether or not that would even be, it would even be feasible for the town, just from a third-party perspective, from the independent from the Board of Selectmen and Board of Health.
Just to, are we asking this because we're looking for a third perspective, or are we asking this because having the resources to acquire the information and review it and make a decision is difficult?
I would say the resources available, just because you want to make sure that you're getting the full picture of everything involved. Just something that impacts the budget so much, basically creating a new department. I think that we just need to really do our due diligence on this and make sure that we have as many perspective as possible on the future operations of this. You know, it's the reason why we didn't rush into this in the first place. You know, we were able to get some real rough data in just a few months, but I think, you know, if we get more people or get a few more hands involved in it, that can kind of guide the decision of what goes down there, I think it would be beneficial. So we don't have to form a committee tonight, but I just want to bring that forward for your consideration.
I think before we start requesting any potential people to be on it, I can understand the value of this. I definitely would like to work on the charge. I would also like to work on the qualifications we're requesting of the individuals that would want to apply, so that anybody applying knows right off the bat if they're qualified or not to meet one of the positions. I don't think each position needs to follow the same qualifications. It may be better to have someone that's used to managing the site, someone's used to checking, you know, commodities, you know, more of a financial person that understands the potential incomes that can come from recyclables, et cetera. So I think it's something worth considering and discussing. I don't know if that's something that, again, based on resources, you think you could put something together on and start the draft.
Start the draft. I'll run it by the board.
Yeah, share it between the boards on the draft, and we each have some input and try to work together on it. So I'm fine with that, and I guess I would just, yeah, we'll work through the draft process. Does anybody else have any comments on the concept of creating the study committee?
Certainly. We want to pay attention to not just the operations down there, the layout down there, but we need to put some time constraints on it. If we do want to take it over, the actual process of taking over and establishing what we want we need to leave ourselves several months. So this isn't something we can put off for months to form the committee and let them go for 3 or 4 months. We have to come up with some timelines that make sense, so we have enough time to. The idea of waiting a year, while I'm not objecting to waiting a year, is it's a lot easier to take it over and plan the phases than to try to get down there and scurry and get it done. I have no doubt we could get it done. It'd be a lot more efficient to take a year. it'll take at least, say, 5 or 6 months to establish it and start working towards that end. So I'd like to see the committee maybe, be concluded by, mid-December, early January at the latest, to be concluded with their findings. If that makes
I
sense.
also have a couple of newspaper clippings I didn't bring them with me about recyclables and everything, and you'd be interested in that.
Okay, so I'd make a motion that, can I? I know I'm the chairman, but usually Charlie always asks someone else to make a motion.
Yeah, I usually do.
So-
I don't think we need to yet if we're not gonna form it. If Andrew's gonna come
No.
up
Yeah,
with a draft.
let me have a draft and I'll have one to you by next meeting, so that we can.
Okay.
We can discuss a little bit, like I said before, we
Mhm.
won't need a motion.
No, the motion was just to
Yeah,
kind of approve Andrew starting the draft and getting moving, so
I don't-
we're not complaining that he spent all his time doing that.
I don't think we need that, but at least we can get it back in the agenda, talk about it next meeting, and, he can talk with you guys in between of what he's putting on it and get an idea.
Yeah, get it together and let's see it, and
And then we'll have to bang heads at a meeting some night and really try to finalize what we want for the charge and get it out there so we can look for people. But probably 2 meetings away till that's done, so we're probably looking at end of June to get the charge out there, hopefully. And that'll leave us a couple of, months to fill the committee and several months to work on it.
Hopefully we can recruit a town meeting. So,
There you go, that'd be nice. Be nice to have it done by then, so.
Okay.
Sound good? All right, thank you guys.
Okay, thank you,
Thank
gentlemen.
you very much for coming to the meeting,
Good night.
appreciate it.
Thank you, you too.
Feel free to stay till 10 and watch the rest. Is that good or bad? Wait a minute. I hope it's not that late, but sometimes we go way later. All right.
For old business, I'd actually like to start with the economic development grant update. Oh, police chief report was in bold, it threw me off. It looked like a heading to a new section. I'm just-
Get by.
They have to bite their tongue. They should have
My
brought it to the
apologies.
table if they have an issue. I'm honest about it.
This is the police chief report, so.
Good evening.
Leave it.
Evening.
So very, basically, headquarters is not completely together. We still have the camera issue to solve, which we've been working on. They start actually physically installing the cameras tonight. So how long that's gonna take and what hardware is still to come in, we don't know, but at least we're moving. The things that we have accomplished, we've accomplished the copper lines being installed, which means that we're up and live for the very essential CGIS and the breath testing equipment, both of which required the copper lines, and we were down for a while, so big step. We are waiting for the automated fingerprint identification machine, which is about a $25,000 machine, but we're getting it.
That was a grant, right?
Yeah, we're getting it off of the state grant, they're giving us a unit. When that comes in, the backside to that is that you then have to, well, you should choose to, and I will recommend a $3,000 a year service agreement, but I'll come to you and we'll work that out. We don't have to buy it, but then if it breaks down, it's on us. But there could be user fees if we have other departments, but before we enter into anything like that, once the machine gets here, I'll bring those numbers to you guys and to the board and see what you think. The cruisers, we have our new cruiser coming online. It's right now being built, I mean, it's here. And we're having lights installed and the decals and things like that. And so that's great news for us because we were operating one cruiser down, but at the same time, 3031 has failed to pass inspection, and we don't have the money to fix it. I'm not sure we really should fix it at this point, but just wait and see where we go with new cruiser allotment this year. So right now, that's down, that's sidelined. So we're down 2, we'll be down 1 in 2 weeks when we get the new cruiser online. The 3031 is a 2010 Crown Victoria with, it's got mileage, it's got road wear.
A lot of years for a cruiser.
Sorry?
It's a lot of years for a cruiser.
Especially, yeah.
8
lot of
years?
years.
That's.
A lot of years and a lot of miles. So then that brings me to the hiring process. We are working with the town attorney to put together the pre-employment agreement that I've discussed with you, and we just got approval from the union to move forward with that. So as soon as our attorney becomes available, which I believe could be as early as next week, that might give me, then I might be able to come back here with a recommendation for hiring next week, and if not, it'll be at the next meeting. And my final issue is we are currently down, we're allotted for 6 part-time officers, and part-time officers are essential to us filling the gaps in our, and doing it effectively because they don't cost as much per hour in our schedule that are naturally created by having 9 officers. We are allotted 6, we currently have 4, 2 have moved on since in the past year and a half, and we haven't replaced them. It's entirely possible, if you look at what we promised them that if they stay here and work hard and do a good job, then we'll consider them for full-time employment, right? So it's conceivable that we're going to lose one of those part-timers to full-time employment here, so not really lose them, which would open 3 slots. So the way that we fund part-timers is we supply them with the weapons. They supply themselves with academy training for the part-time academy. They buy their uniforms, and when they come on board, we give them a field training program, for however many hours it takes for them to come up to speed. Some come from other departments, so all they have to do is learn the roads, if even that. So at any rate, it's a very low-cost item to bring these people on because obviously we already have the weapons, in our armory. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to get approval to start looking for 2 and possibly 3 replacements to bring us back up to speed, which will help our budget.
I don't have any problem with that. There's no expense up front for
Fine
us,
with
and it
me.
obviously is savings to part-time versus overtime hours, so I'd make a motion we approve pursuing the part-timers.
Okay,
Do I have a second?
Oh,
That's okay.
I thought you had a second.
Are you gonna second it?
What?
Are you gonna second it?
Oh,
We'll change it
I'm
around.
so used to going.
I know, that's always, we're kinda waiting like.
Yeah.
Any further discussion? All right, call for vote.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Thank
Sorry about that.
Take some time to get used to the change.
That's all I have.
I gotta get used to clerk stuff, like it's gonna be.
Unless anybody has any questions about the department?
I have one question, Chief. We met with Stetson a while back. Have you noticed any change or any?
Our call volume is down from Stetson. But we still have calls. It's just that we're
Yeah.
not there as much as we used to be. Now, we have the school resource officer. I should have mentioned that. He's been in place for a few weeks now. He's actually, this week is school break, and so he's in training for his school resource officer certification. Our plan is to have him there, going over there a couple of hours a week to try and create some type of a relationship at that level, as there are 4 or 5 students from Stetson in the school. We haven't moved on that yet, but we're going to try. Call volume is down. There's no ironclad answer as to why.
Okay.
Could be seasonal.
Yeah.
When the weather gets nicer, they're more apt to
Right.
take a walk. Cold, nasty, and rainy, not so much. Sleet, snow, all the things we have in spring around here. We'll see. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Now on to old business. I'd like to start with the Economic Development Grant update from CMRPC, which could roll into a couple other items that we also have on the agenda. I would love for you to come up. Thank you very much for coming.
Congratulations, Mr. Chairman.
Yes. I was gonna say, that might be more appropriate. Thank you very much.
So thanks for having us here today. Andrew and I had been talking about, the grant is actually through the Community Compact Program, and to work on an economic development plan towards a strategy which would further, actually with the possibility of being a full chapter in a master plan. I know the town of Barry doesn't have a master plan, but moving in that direction with different stages of it. This would be the first stage. Do you have a copy of what had been presented?
We've
It was
had it,
previous.
but I don't have it on me.
and I have that there, just kind of explaining it. But, the grant would take care of the first task towards this particular plan. We have multiple communities that have done something similar and then come back with the second and third task through the district local technical assistance funding. They'll apply for that and then award grant funding through us to complete the other stages as well. Hardwick, Douglas, Upton, they're all working towards that as well. So, and this would be completely covered through the grant that you've been awarded through the community compact funding.
So we're looking at if we start, we'll get to a report somewhere in October, maybe early November, if we dilly-dally into May to start the process. Gotcha.
Yeah, and what we'd be looking to do, as most of you may be aware, we're working on the Quabbin Educational Municipal Partnership. And we've scheduled a business meeting, for all the area businesses on May 7th. It'll be held at the Barry Mill, and it's a Thursday.
May and Thursday.
And it's June 7th.
Postcard going in there.
Yeah. It's the second Thursday of May. There's a Wednesday, no, it's Wednesday, sorry, I'm thinking of the final meeting. So the
Second Wednesday would be May 9th.
then it's the 9th,
Okay.
thanks. So the first Thursday of June is probably the 7th, and that's when the final meeting will be.
Yes.
For all of the communities, for all of the region, I hope that you'll be able to join us on that. But, so hoping to do something coordinated with that particular event. As you may recall, I know you were involved and Mr. Chase was involved as well with the creation of the business community in Barry.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
looking to do something maybe region-wide or just bring businesses in because we're gonna be talking economic development. So it really ties in well with everything that's going on. And then you also have the economic development coordinator that we're working with you on that particular grant that was awarded through the community compact.
That'll be someone from CMRPC specifically assigned to this project? Or are you saying that's the Hardwick coordinator?
Yes,
Okay,
through,
Gotcha.
through the 5
That would
towns.
be shared with the 5 towns.
Yeah. So we're
I
helping
remember that now.
with
Yes.
the job description
Yes.
and that type of thing.
Yeah.
So it really fits well with everything that's going on up in this region. This particular study falls into a great time frame. We can actually add more into it and have it be a little bit more robust because we can coordinate it with the other projects that we have going on as well.
My specific, I don't know even if it's the right concern, but my interest is at this level of focusing on Barry and what's best for Barry with an economic development plan for Barry. So my concern that I was kind of bringing up a little bit at a previous meeting when Andrew first brought this up was a little bit of how much is this going to be focused on Barry, helping Barry do what Barry thinks is best for Barry. I do recognize that means you've got to work with neighbors. What's best for Barry isn't an island. You work with everybody. So the regional, there is a certain regional aspect that you have to include in that. But my concern was a little bit of this actually helping more create the regional than it is to address the local. I'm just saying that was, so my interest was, I really wanted to make sure we're focusing on something that's this. And part of my concern also is with the regional coordinator is for this, I don't know how much Andrew is just our only point person you're working with, or I'm actually thinking to suggest that also we should have an economic development committee that can include, say, the business community of Barry may have a member they want to nominate. Maybe the agricultural commission may have a member of their commission, or someone in the farming community that they think is a good part of that. So that when we do move forward, we actually have that committee in place, so they're already working with phase 1 of this to help us. Because I know I have dreams in my own head of what's, but that's me. I don't represent the whole town in that regard, and I recognize that. So those are some of my concerns as to how do you see, again, interacting with the town, and who in the town is gonna be your main point of contact, and how do you see working through that process?
First, I'd like to answer your first concern, and it would be a 100% Barry economic development strategy. So
Okay.
it'd be focused on the town of Barry.
I really think
And
it-
your assets and, the SWOT analysis would be pertaining to Barry itself.
we really built off of the work that the Quabbin project had, more so than the other way around. They would take that information, we've got that to work with, and then really really cater it, really kind of customize it for the town of Barry. And I think the other thing, if I may, when we were talking with the town of Hardwick, a couple of weeks ago, we kind of did exactly what we said. The coordinator would really be guided by a kind of a joint committee with participation from each of the towns, if I remember what we were talking about. It's over here.
Yeah, because we were talking about that one, the original thing was, how do you build, or how do you,
Make it sustainable.
or it was even more, how much time are they spending with each
Yeah.
town, I think it was, and I brought it up that, well, it isn't about each town, it's about the region, so it
Right.
should be just how much time are they dedicating to their jobs overall. So that is a different scope of work than what we're talking about with the economic development strategy itself.
But I think a committee is a wonderful idea, and you should move in that direction. You may want to consider someone from the planning board as well, with the zoning and use and that type of more regulatory
Yeah.
type look at things.
Well, the nice thing is that this will actually give them that person marching orders. This is kind of that person's mission to do list when they're doing a very run.
Okay.
They've got something to work with, opposed to, well, where do I start? We've already given them a lot of the background. They should have some, like, almost a punch list of things that they're doing, meeting with business community, with Barry, and so forth. They've already got the assets mapped, they already know what this is going to do. And really have a game plan to move forward with immediately, rather than wondering, this is really, the coordinator position is only really fully funded for a year. After that, you have to decide whether you want to continue to fund it. So it's great for you guys to have that kind of longer list to do.
And we can work through Andrew, that's not a problem, unless you guys want to work through someone else.
I mean, I would start with Andrew, and then if we do get a committee set up, it may be keeping Andrew in the loop, but working with the committee chairman or something of that sort. But I would recommend that we would start as Andrew as our point of contact for all things on this grant at the moment. I don't know if anybody else on the board would like to discuss what you have. Go ahead, Jerry.
Yeah, I had a question. One of the things, one project that I thought of that I'd like to see done at some point is, I'm a very strong advocate of CDCs. And I don't know if that can come out of a study like this or not.
It can definitely be explored. I ran a CDC for like 12 years down when I was
Yeah.
in Marlboro for a while, and then before that in Boston. So it's something we've actually had the town of Hardwick ask us to explore a while back. So it's something that has potential. There are none outside of the city of Worcester. There are no community development corporations
Mhm.
in our region.
Yeah.
This is definitely Quabog, which is not close for.
Right.
I mean, it's covered by the region. But I think it's a brilliant idea. It's something that would be explored.
Yeah,
It really
it-
gives you a lot of capacity and a lot of options that you wouldn't have as a city or as a non.
Right, I mean, I don't think it's gonna solve all problems, but I've always liked CDCs and been associated with them previous employment and thought they had a lot to offer.
A tremendous partner to the city of Worcester.
Yeah,
The CDC.
I know that, I've read about it in Worcester at times, it gets, what is it, the Maine South one gets a little carried away with
Okay.
things, but we'll leave that as that.
Can I just ask what CDC means?
Community Development Corporation.
Okay, thank you.
What are they,
They-
more specifically?
They often take, they can take a number of forms, but they're often help with housing development or economic development. They can be very small and focus on kind of small business loans, like the one that was the one that worked out southern Worcester County for a long time in 5 towns down there. And they really had, used it to foster small business that can take on kind of community projects, smaller kind of beautification projects. The key word there being community, so it's driven much more by the community. The municipalities are often a partner in that, because they're helping kind of set the tone and really kind of engage the communities. But in a lot of areas, it's really around kind of affordable housing development. A lot of them outside of Boston or outside of the metropolitan areas don't do the housing development, but take on much more of an economic development role, kind of boosting. So I think Charlie's right, that would be a great tool, to add to the toolbox for, this kind of plan.
So the idea here is looking for an entity, business of some sort, profit or nonprofit, that would like to come into this town or region and create a CDC. In other words, to have a CDC means you need to bring someone in that wants to be the CDC, correct? Okay. Just so I better understand, it's not like an agency of a government, it's a
No, it's
private company that has some,
usually
Are they all
nonprofit.
nonprofits?
Yeah.
Almost all of them are
They can do everything from help really small businesses get started, some educational stuff, and they have a little more autonomy than a regular public board in that they can issue some loans and stuff like that. It's not gonna solve every problem.
No, but it's definitely, when you get to that the SWOT analysis, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats, it's definitely an opportunity. I mean, in the town of Northborough, they have a housing nonprofit that helps them look, explore the opportunities. They develop maybe a handful of units, but it's a way for, the town of Berry doesn't have a whole lot of resources to actually develop housing. Whereas if a nonprofit, such as a community development corporation, were able to do that, you could funnel resources to that, help, they can write the grants, to the Federal Home Loan Bank or, a variety of different institutions to actually garner some of the funds to, whether it's filling the gap on housing development costs and making something, writing down the mortgage for somebody, but again, to bring on affordable housing, but also, when I was in St. Louis County, we wrote a grant to the USDA to get a small business loan program going, and they administered it. So they had the tools and the resources to actually do that. So whether it's starting up a new community development corporation or, looking to Quabog and seeing, would they consider expanding this by a little bit?
And it also opens up the opportunity for additional grant opportunities that you may not be eligible for as a municipality. Like the Greater Worcester Foundation, you have to be for a lot of their grant opportunities to be a nonprofit, so that they may be able to apply
I
and
got you.
reinvest in the community.
thank you. Anybody else have anything they'd like to?
I don't know if you want to take action on that, on the agreement tonight, or. I mean,
Do
I
we, does
did
the,
notice some issues if you,
do the other board members feel comfortable with the review of the agreement? Or do you want more time to review it before taking
We
action?
looked at it last time and I just went through it again, it's, other than as a town amendment there, I don't see any other problems with it. But we'd have to just make sure we swap the name out before we sign it, but,
do it on the signature page.
this is, I see this, we have to confirm with the accountant that the money is there for it. This is grant money we've already received, or it was coming in?
It is coming in, I don't believe that we've received it yet, but I can touch base with,
Yeah, the only concern would be make sure we get the grant money in before we spend it.
Right.
We understand that as
You
yeah,
know what I mean?
we've signed the agreement with the state for the money, I can just confirm whether or not it's
Execute the
already here
contract
or
for the grant.
process.
Is that the?
I don't like to spend it till we have it, that's
Yes,
all.
yes, the
We have
contract's
to
been
with a lot of
signed,
things.
submitted.
Oh, the contract's already been
Yeah.
signed too, okay.
Yes, yeah,
So,
yeah, it may already be in the account, I'll just have to look through.
That's all right.
They're pretty
I would say, I'd make a motion to go ahead and sign this pending confirmation from the accountant that the funds are there now. And then we go ahead and sign it. My motion.
I'll second.
discussion? I would only suggest that, we make a motion to approve it, but then wait for it to get fixed, a couple things about Mendon, et cetera. And then we can just sign it at our leisure once the cleaned up draft comes back.
Yeah, agreed, yes.
Assuming it's just typos and references to the wrong town and not a rewritten paragraph. You know what I mean, so we're approving it based
I
on
just saw
that.
right, I just saw that one spot.
There's two spots, there's one on
This one?
section 3, and then there's one where it goes in
Someone
witness
just-
whereof, so.
Sorry.
I actually did that. I can't blame anybody else.
Yep, says Town of Mendon after, it has our street address, Barry, Mass, and then the Town of Mendon will send a
I must
notice.
not have finished the search and find.
It's easy to do. It is.
Should've.
Take that out.
Sorry, sorry.
Now.
Or I should have
Did
proved
you
it for
notice?
you.
No.
I noticed it quick before the last meeting.
Yeah.
Forgot that.
I'll fix it, send it over.
So motion to approve, pending the confirmation from the accountant, the funds are there, and the corrections. We'll sign it at our leisure when that is done.
No second.
Any further discussion? Call for vote?
Aye?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Now that you're here, I do know that there was also discussion or reference in the pre-meeting email or something that you may also have something to state about the Open Space and Recreation Committee,
Yeah,
how
I
you
read
helped
it.
the previous or something like that.
I read it in the Barry Gazette, about the discussion on the open space, so I
Mhm.
figured while we were gonna be here, we could talk about that and potential funding opportunities, and with that, I turn that over to Trish.
That was cool.
Yeah, very good.
So your open space plan, which looks like this is just the front page, it's about 130 pages. We completed for you, I think one of my first projects when I was working in PC. It is expired, it expired in October 2017. So, without an approved open space plan, the town of Berry can't get any further funding from land or park, a variety of DCR projects. It's still a great plan, it still has a very thoughtful action plan. We had a committee that I worked with, including folks like Ed Yaglu and Phil Hubbard and a number of folks who, there is now, I forgot how it was funded, to be honest with you, but, it was, typically to do an open space plan, and we're getting really good at them. We're working on the town of Brookfield, we've gone through some very thoughtful discussions about how to make the community engagement process even more robust than it was. But they're pretty standard plans. The state has, you need this chapter, this chapter, this chapter, this chapter. There's a survey that's done, it requires an ADA, kind of an assessment of the town-owned or managed properties. We've got the maps, so we're almost down to the point where we can kind of plug in the name of any given community and kind of crank out a number of the maps. And then bring them to the communities and have them kind of review tweaks and so forth. So, that said, they're also not, there's, we don't want it to say Mendon on it. We want it to be your plan, so we're gonna meet with we'd love to have a committee that you guys would be able to assign to work on it. There's a funding opportunity that the state has for small communities, and unless you guys keep growing, for towns under 6,000 for the 2010 census. I'm assuming you're probably slightly over 6,000 now.
We're actually
Under
just
five.
over
Still-
five.
we're
just
still
over
under.
5, I thought.
Under, just under 5, yeah.
Great.
We were just over, now we're just under, so
I think it was like, let's see,
we're ballpark of 5,000.
Oh, good.
So.
But anyway, so there's a grant program that the state has, it's called the Small Communities Grant. So for communities under 6,000, it would provide $8,000 worth of funding to assist, and that would be 80%, it would provide funding of up to $8,000, which would be 80% of the total cost. So assuming a grant, open space plan would cost $10,000, it would provide you $8,000 of that.
So it's 80% capped at 8,000, is that, okay.
and that other 2,000 would come from you guys or district local technical assistance, or, you know, something similar. It's an interesting, you know, I've gone back and forth with the folks at DCR a number of times, because if you ask me, it puts the cart before the horse, because, but in your instance, because they'll give you the $8,000 if you have a project you wanna apply for other assistance. Did they send that first? They'll give you money to do the plan if you already know what you wanna do. But fortunately, we do still have a pretty robust action plan. So what I would recommend in this, because the funding cycle, I think you would be most advantageous to apply for something in fiscal year 19. That way you can spend it all out in that year.
Oh, these are fiscal year specific grants. so
Well, there's a
like
way to
spend it
roll it
within.
over, it's a little, you still have to have that kind of project in mind that you wanna spend money on, and that could be acquiring a piece of property, acquiring an easement on a piece of property, building a playground, doing an appraisal for some of that, so you need to have a project in mind, or they won't give you the $8,000, which is, again, a little backwards if you ask me. But so what I would almost recommend is that, if there were an open space committee assembled, pull those folks together, look at the action plan and use that to kind of say, we wanna do the open space plan with this in mind for a potential project. You know, I know for the longest time, the town of Berry's been looking for like a town beach, maybe there's some acquisition dollars that are required, you know, and it could be anything, I'm just using that as an example, but. So you need to have some type of project in mind, you know, even if it's an appraisal of something, before they'll give you the $8,000 to do the actual plan. Again, it's a little backwards to me, but I think,
So could that
Are
go
you
towards
saying we
something
need
at like Felton Fields?
yes.
Like Mary Claims or-
Would that, so to get the grant to help
Right.
rebuild this,
Yeah,
do you need to be pursuing another grant application or just a plan to do something?
no, you need to be pursuing another application at the same time, which is really
Okay.
strange.
An application that requires you have one of these.
Would you think that would
Yes.
come after?
So that's
back
the, that's the
door?
true
Yeah, it's just.
spin in your circles trying to figure out, I don't have one, but I need the funds to do it, so I'm gonna ask for this one knowing I don't have this. Okay, which pretty much just means it's easy to say no.
Well, but.
Because they got you either way, no, you don't have a plan, or no, you're not.
It's not often that they would turn you down. It's
Oh,
not-
and I'm just-
Yeah, no, but I agree.
Normally you go through the planning process to set your goals and you find out the interest, and then you would apply after the plan was done to implement certain projects. And this way you're already thinking ahead of, it is different, it's a different way of thinking.
The next question I have then on this is, say we pursue the 80% grant, or just come up with our own money, whatever. And whether it's CMRPC or someone assists us in creating the new open space and recreation plan. Is that a process that would allow the Open Space and Recreation Committee to learn and possibly, if they take the right notes, be prepared to update it when the next one, is it a 7-year regular?
7-year plan.
So in 7 years, they could be making sure that over the 7 years, they're collecting the data or the information they need to, so 6 months before 7 years is over, they're like, here's our new one, so we're not caught in the ask for a grant to get a grant, we've got it, and we're just asking for grants based on what it is. And I'm just curious, is that something moving into this that would potentially provide the outline or explain properly what needs to be done as we're doing it? So that then, if we got the right people and they're interested and willing to take on the responsibility, then they can start keeping it up, maintaining it, rather than just every 7 years we ask someone to rebuild it for us.
It's the implementation as well, I mean, that's really what you're trying to strive and work towards, is you don't want it to sit on the shelf.
Right.
So it would also be implementing it. I'm just thinking 7 years, somebody serving on the committee for 7 years, but if they have that passion, yeah, I think it's doable.
Well, that's the
It's a
challenge,
process
is
that you
just
follow.
getting, you know, whether it's a master plan committee, it's just getting the institutional knowledge that, and keep being able to continue that for 7 years. It's definitely a very doable. I mean, you could call us, we could crank out that we've had towns who've done it themselves, and they've just asked us, can you do the maps for us? And we can do that probably with local planning assistance, that's not that difficult. There's a whole workbook that shows you how to do it, we can walk people through it. We can do pieces, parts of it, like for the town of Sturbridge, we're doing the public engagement part of it, they're doing the rest of the planning themselves. So,
And they have a full-time planner too, with an assistant, so.
It helps to have the resources that are committed
And that's where you'll find more so, where they're able to tackle it themselves.
Some towns have used, outside of CMRPC, the East Quabbin Community Land Trust has done some of these, the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions have done some of them. UMass has done some.
Did Lester.
So there are definitely different options, I mean, it doesn't have to be us, I mean.
Oh, that wasn't to ask, like, it's again, just, what can we try to instill in this
Yeah.
committee that we either recreate or refill the positions on? And then possibly request that they are diligent in passing the institutional knowledge. So that new committees in, say, 2 or 3 years, maybe you got a complete turnover, they have something to say, this is how it was built, this is what we did on the plan, this is what, well, knowing that we've done 3 of our 7 items on a plan, we now need to find 3 new ones to start, because that's how you'll maintain the plan, is when you do everything, you gotta create a new plan. So that's all I meant, that concept,
No, I agree.
and I didn't know how much creating the plan versus helping us create the plan would be part of, say, the grant or the opportunity that CMRPC might be able to provide us is,
We can do that as well.
right, because sometimes, as they say, teach someone to fish versus give them a fish, and so it's just a thought I had, and I just wasn't curious if the program is just a one thing because of maybe your resources, so that's why I was curious. I know Greg had
Yeah,
something.
along the same lines as not letting it expire, is it something that we could treat like a capital plan, that as each year expires and we have 6 years left of the plan, could we add a 7th year to it? And make more of a live, living plan that evolves each year? And then perhaps, since we already have a plan in place, apply for a grant towards extending that 1 year every year and constantly ask for a small portion of money to rework each year as you know, the 7-year plan doesn't happen 1 through 7 like it is. Year 1 is done, year 2 through 7 change. And maybe each year, just reevaluate that every year and keep the document alive. And apply for lesser grants. We already have this in place, therefore we can apply for the grant to work on it, because we have it. And perhaps add to it each year. That would keep a committee active and keep hopefully new people coming in to stay up with it. And to kind of go through the process every year and renew it, it will get any new members of the committee up to speed. So, okay, here's years 2 through 7, and we're gonna discuss them and just, if we're gonna leave them on, if we're gonna modify it, if we're gonna flip some things around. But they could go through it and just literally rewrite it every year with minimal changes and adding a year.
Yeah, I'm not sure how DCR would take that. I can talk to,
I think it sounds too smart, which
Yeah,
makes,
I
which
was
means,
thinking
it might,
the same
that
thing,
might
to be
put them
honest with
off,
you, I'm
but.
like,
There's actually a lot of towns that do that with their master plans, they do a
Well-
chapter a year or 2 chapters if they're
Otherwise,
smaller.
You need
wait
to.
7
Yeah,
years,
it's
it's a
already-
huge.
You can't just say, here's 5 years when it's done and say, okay, let's make 5 year, and we certainly couldn't do it with the capital plan, to say, okay, well, we're year 5 of our capital plan, we have no more in the future, let's start over again.
Yeah,
You
just
you have to
drop
have those in the sites to go forward, and I think if we couldn't officially make a new plan, we could unofficially add year 7 to it.
To maintain
Yeah.
it, so instead,
Create
year 7,
year
we're
one
just
for the
saying,
next-
oh, here's
create-
our plan, we've been
Right.
updating every year anyway.
And we could create year 1 for the next plan, in the first year, and in year 2, we create year 2 for the next plan, and extend it that way if we couldn't keep it alive. But I would think we could modify the plan and keep it alive as it goes. It would make awful good sense.
I love the idea, I mean, because I think you're right. So often, it's the plan goes from 0 to 5 or 0 to 7, and then you get to 7 and you're like.
Hit the reset,
It's
right.
like, you have to hit the reset button and start all over. I'm looking at the action plan, before we came out here today, and, again, having been part of working with the committee to put this together, you've actually accomplished quite a bit of it, without an open space plan. I have to be honest with you. I mean, through the Lost Villages Scenic Byway, you know, you've got complete streets, you have the green communities, you've got a very active ag commission, you know, you've done actually quite a bit of this stuff without actually having a committee that's been shepherding it along. So, a testament to the town and the enthusiasm around this stuff, so it'd be great for you guys to,
When did the committee dissolve? We did have a committee.
almost immediately.
It's been a long time.
Well, that's the request that we had from Mr. Kane to put it back together, and I think it would be smart to move forward with that. If I don't know how he's done with talking to the previous members,
Yeah,
but
and
I think you
we
said
found the list of the previous members. We were still working on trying to draft or find a charge to blow the dust off of to get going again.
kicking around some of these ideas would
Figured
help,
we'd have
help
this
them, help
discussion
us.
first and then move into it.
I'm even more in favor of the open space committee at this point. I mean, I like the idea we heard the other night, but it certainly makes more sense,
Mhm.
especially if there's grant money to look for projects. You know, more playgrounds are always a good thing. There's really not that many around, but you know, nice. There's things to do for not just playgrounds for kids, but you know, people like the sitting area down in Ornay, and they like, you know, lots of different things. More is better. More things for people to do. More places that are less congested is
We'd be
always
happy to
nice.
sit down, you know, once you form a committee and kind of talk through what those next steps are, you know, help you. I mean, the application, to be honest with you, is ridiculously easy. And I can leave this with Andrew.
We like easy.
Yeah.
That's the application to say, here's our new plan, do you approve it?
No, that's just the application for the dollars to do the plan.
Okay, for the grant, for the support, et
Again,
cetera,
the
okay.
challenge is gonna be kind of identifying a project that you wanna move forward with, so that you can couple it with the application for the dollars to do the plan.
I know what Ed's gonna ask for. At least I think I do. He wants an easement.
You want to need to-
Oh, for the trail.
I don't know if anybody wants
Right,
this, this is just the cover and the action plan itself attached to it.
But a lot of times, communities
Thank you
realize
very
that their plan has expired when the opportunity to purchase them comes up. And they want to go after the property, and it's 69.
We've had
Coming up.
some land come that we've received and other that we haven't. We've had offers for people that, in lieu of taxes, let land go and give us lands. And always our holdup is making sure it's not contaminated anyway. And maybe that's something we can get grant money for, as that goes
Actually,
to
we can
make
get
sure,
appraisals.
you know, make sure the land is okay to accept. Because that's the biggest caution in accepting is in the past they did, and they got some contaminated land with contaminated wells, and the town had to pay to bring water in and decommission the wells, and it's very expensive. We don't want to repeat that. Yeah, but that's, I think we'll have, probably often get the opportunity for people that want to let land go, they're not going to build on it, or it's in the middle of nowhere. Be nice if we could pick it up and do something with it. Even if it just means putting a bench out there and clearing some grass, I mean, yeah, something to make a point where people can use it for a launching point, a picnic area, whatever.
It's nice down on the Barry O'Can line, I was admiring that today. Canoe launch.
Yeah, it's
Does anybody have anything else they'd like to add to the discussion on the Open Space Recreation Committee and obviously the plan itself? It's obviously gonna be coming back up as we review the charge and potential appointments and et cetera, but this is more of a very high-level discussion here. If not, I'd like to say thank you very much for spending your time helping us, providing some
Thank you.
input and guidance.
Anything you need?
get rid of Mendon and get that back to us and
I don't think we'll get rid of it, we'll remove it from the document.
from the document, yeah.
And talking, just one of the other items that you were talking about earlier, as far as the, with the waste, you know, doing it in-house, if there's anything we can help with, as far as doing like a quick survey, sending it out to all of our surrounding communities, and we have 40, including the city of Worcester. Or either to go to the North County, you know, we have a good relationship with Massachusetts, just let us know.
Okay.
We can get that information out and get it back for whatever we can compile.
We gotta make that
Whether it's
charge up
town
first and
owned
figure out what we're
or,
gonna do with it, yeah.
You know, not, or
Thank you.
It's a base letter.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
All right.
Good night.
Have a good
Thanks
night.
again.
Hopefully it'll be spring the next time we see.
Yeah.
If we're lucky, right?
I hear it's coming by July.
I don't know, I hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll get that draft to you tomorrow. I'll have 3 people read it.
Computers think it's a word,
Request,
so.
like
Yeah, I
a
know.
2-minute recess. Leave at 7:35, be back in
Thank you.
7:38.
Sure.
Leave it at that.
So who's leaving the library?
We had one of the part-time assistants, she was brought in, did the restructure, and she was brought down hours, then she said, not really worth it for me, decided to, walk away, but I think they already have, somebody already was gonna replace her.
So won't be hours if somebody doesn't come this one. It's tough. It used to be out there. When I was a kid, you went to the library, it was a busy place. And you had to do any kind of school, and you had to go get your first book to do it. Intimidating and scary. But now everything's online. You know, people, it's so rare that people get in there. It's, probably doesn't need as much staffing. It's covered.
I guess this person left, she was kind of like, she was scheduled for hours, and she was just giving them away. She-
Just put embargoes in case there's no overwork. Send those over to 99 people.
We just swapped
They
it.
can yell for.
What's that?
Bonzo, we just went to Swansea, e-dispatch, so.
It's nice.
Yeah.
What's really nice is,
Yeah.
That I was supposed to.
I could be in Gardner, and on my way home, where the pager does not come in.
Yeah.
And you have no idea to get home. The trucks are all going to it, but now you get the page, you're like, oh crap, I better step it up. I don't have to hurry for this, but to know something's going on, to know where it is.
Thanks, Trish.
Yeah.
Take care.
Yep.
Thanks again.
I can't get service here, but I gotta call. I can get it somewhere.
Right.
Hard looking anywhere, so. But now it's like, ooh, I don't
You
think
get
what's
them,
going on.
and you know what's going on. Depending how involved you wanna get, you can also screen
Yeah, well, yeah.
dispatch.
Vegas too, it's, still do it. First morning, just longer times, so it's dispatch.
Yeah.
Just go, here, times are locked.
Got it?
All right. I'd like to open the meeting back up from the little recess I just had. Move on to the next agenda item, Felton Field Commission regarding capital projects.
Well, those tie right in together, don't they?
This is just some information, nothing special, just
Thank you.
basic info about Felton.
Thank you.
We're here basically because we've got a project we want to do down in Felton, and we're going to be going before finance and looking for some monies. And I just want to inform you people and get support behind it. Felton for a long time, you know, has been a vital part of the community, but it's been looking pretty ragged down there. And the last few years, Dave Wright with his big squeeze operation down there has been cutting a few trees every year, helping us out there, and then he burns them. And that's great, but he's reached a point where he can't cut any more than the lines. And Felton has been operating on a shoestring budget basically for forever. And we exist on investment money. Unfortunately, I remember about 10 years ago, we received an inheritance for $10,000. And right now, I think we've got about 11,000 in our account. And we take in, last year we took in, with shows and stuff, we took in about 3,000. So we don't have much to work with. And what we wanna do is finish cutting down all the trees, and then we wanna put a fence up. And a 3-wall fence, it's like 1,260 feet. And then we want to plant to help bring back a little bit of that seclusion, is like arborvitae's, beech post. And then we've got to remove all the stumps. And the fence will be back a lot further, so that we remove the stumps and then grade that out, and then there'll be parking there, so everybody doesn't have to go into the field and take up space for parking. And the basic, excuse me, the whole project is about, without a bid for, I'm guessing, on excavation, it's about $40,000. Yeah, we've got bids and stuff. The fence alone is around 19,000 to 20. We've applied for a grant through Fidelity, the Berry Savings Grant. We're hopeful that we can get maybe enough money to install a fence. But I'm gonna be looking for probably around 15, to try and help finish the project. The trees alone at wholesale are around $5,600. That's wholesale. Just for
Oh, you're cutting the trees?
No,
Oh, the battle thing.
buying the new trees, yeah. We have enough money in our account where we could have the trees, present trees removed, chipped and gone. Stump removal is another whole thing. Because it rises up, they can't just grind the stumps out, it's gotta be an excavation project. And with 4-H coming in, which we're really excited about, it's gonna add a lot to Felton. They've already started working there, helping us do some work at the present Patisi building. And through the years, we've really been operating with all volunteer and donations. We haven't come to the town for money in like forever. But we're at a point where we just have no finances to do something like this.
Plus, we don't want volunteers cutting down trees with wires,
Well, no, we wouldn't do that.
and can't do that. But most of the work down there has been done by volunteers. Yeah, all the work has been done by
Oh, pretty
volunteers.
Pretty much. So, that's the project, and we're hoping we can, get started on the tree removal soon.
So we're asking you to
Well, we're just asking for your support right now. I'm gonna be meeting with, finance
Next week.
the 23rd.
Just to clarify, you guys are the town appointed Felton Field, or are you elected? Thank you. I couldn't recall how that,
Dave
so you are
Simons
elected.
is on the committee too, he's not here tonight.
The account you speak of is,
inheritance.
that
This is
was,
a Felton Field account, it's our own separate account.
that's not a town account.
It is a town.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to better understand the relationships, because we've had discussions before with, and this was a whole different thing, but like with the ambulance, when it transitioned from private to, then there was reference to accounts that nobody realized existed that weren't town accounts, and so I'm new to this, so I just need to clarify my understanding, so I know
No,
it's,
a town
okay.
account. It used to be kind of separate, how it was a couple of years ago. people would write a check to Felton Field, after you to the town of Barry, and then they just keep it somewhere.
That helps me, thank you. I know somebody's gonna be asking me later, so I didn't want to say something wrong. Um, Actually, I'm encouraged with 4-H coming back, and again, more bigger events that the town can work together on and continuing to help bring reasons. I mean,
Yeah, they've already built some stairs, and they're looking at making some repairs to the building. We're in the process of, Barry Players rents a back portion of it. And they're in the process of doing some cleaning, we've got a dumpster down there. We've got to do some work down there, clean out a bunch of our accumulated junk. The big squeeze, Dave Wright has junk. But right now, it looks pretty lousy the way Dave cut the trees and stuff, but he left them as kind of a barrier. But Dave did a lot of work for us down there, he saved us a lot of money. I mean, he power washed the whole barn. He then donated.
All the paint and paint the whole building.
They put 2 coats, spray painted 2 coats of paint on there. They did a lot of work.
Fix the windows.
Fixed all the windows upstairs and the front and around all the side, we glazed them all. He did a nice job.
Before we just look into the future also, let's see how this goes. If they decide that, if this goes well, that we're looking to expand, possibly build us a building, but that's what all in the future.
yeah.
So we can,
And we're talking to Massachusetts, the Volk, and see if they can make a sign for us. Because that would be nice.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have any more? Oh, we have a Claire, go ahead.
I have a suggestion. Maybe I've already thought about it. What about doing a big fundraiser? Like a chicken barbecue or
well, we
something?
have thought about that, but
You know,
there's only 3 of us and we do all the work
Yeah.
down there as it is.
but if you can,
Yes.
get some volunteers or even a raffle. You can make quite a bit of money from a raffle.
The Little League did their fields over, oh gosh, what's gonna be about 6 years ago? It's been maybe more, maybe 7, a while ago. And they did it through donations and volunteers, and they actually, the expenses down there were probably in excess of $20,000 or $30,000 that was spent, so they got a lot of donations. And the important thing about that was the people that used that part of it got the donations to take care of it themselves, so the whole town didn't pay for that. And that's what my concern, obviously, for riding and driving events and for trail rides and things, that area, the snack shed, the rings, they're utilized quite a bit for that. But percentage-wise of the population of the town, it's a very small group that actually uses it, so it's hard to allocate the town funds, depending how the budget comes out with our free cash was just certified today, but it's hard to allocate extra funds there. But I also encourage with 4-H going there, and I want to encourage 4-H to move here and participate. And I would anticipate with their involvement will bring more town involvement to the field. So I will advocate for some money to go there when we can with the finance committee, and I'll say that I would like to see us make some investment, because I think our investing will help encourage 4-H to invest and will help encourage the people to come back and use the field, which everything I'm saying, I want to see more community involvement in the commons and projects in the commons, and I do want to see fairs come back down there eventually and see the fairground be used. So while I do have the clear reservation that the riding and driving club is 50 members strong, I know, but I'm saying that's the primary use down there. So 3-rail fencing clearing it benefits 50 people in town.
What's the primary use for that, for the riding part of it? but we've got the tennis courts and everything else down there. And the nice.
Right, and the high school does use the tennis courts for that.
They maintain them.
They
Right.
maintain them and,
But other than that, and the Little League course uses it, we don't have a lot of other normal town activity down there, so that's my reservation, to say, sure, we're gonna try to get your funding, is because we don't have a lot of public use there, so I'm hoping that if we do give some funding and 4-H does come in, that we're gonna increase use, that's what I'm saying, that's why I'll support spending some money there if we can.
anybody from town can use it.
Right,
You know,
but,
if you go down there on any given morning, there's dozens of dogs
yeah.
during the day. So people in town do use it and they do like it.
And as I said, because I wanna see increased use, and I do wanna see more involvement in this field, it's a great asset. I would like to see us invest some money in there, but I don't think it'd be any place in the neighborhood of 40,000. I'd be surprised if we can come up with any place remotely close to that in the budget right now. But if we can help with fundraising and help advertise and promote a fundraising event, if we think of something, I think that'd be a great idea. Just like the car show they're having, if we had some other thing, like you did a tractor pull again and had people paying admission to come in and sold concession rights and did things, we might be able to bring some monies in. You know, in a 50-50 raffle, a raffle of items in a day like that, could bring in several $1,000s. Something to do just to help out, and of course, open space committee, we get into that, that's what that committee's gonna be good for. Maybe, as we said, looking for 19, we can spend open space grant money, that might be a way to do it. But we need to start getting things in order to get there. But we'll find out, finance, I'm sure will have their recommendation, we'll see what they say with money. And I will support something down there for sure, personally, because I wanna see that, I wanna see the 4-H and I wanna see the use go up, I wanna see kids back there with chickens and goats and cows and, right?
Summer basketball league is there also.
Okay, that's good too.
One thing I would like to just add, and this isn't it, I think for a lot of our, again, like say our smaller committees that are specifically focused on, say, Felton Field or other committees, I know that we started maybe a few years ago, but we've also really kind of put a press in the last year and a half to get back to having a capital planning committee. So what we would like to do is start with these things by submitting them into the capital planning committee so they can start looking and trying to build these into a 5-year plan. So you submitted this request to them?
Not this particular.
Okay, that's all. And it's not a big deal. I'm not saying timing and everything sometimes doesn't work as well as we wish. I'm just saying continue to use that mechanism. So if anything that comes up, like, you know, we'd like to do this, the more info you can support the accuracy of the number, the better. But if all you got is a ballpark, at least get it on their list of things to consider. So I'm just kind of re-emphasizing that process, not to necessarily say that this process either fit or should have fit. I didn't know if you guys were aware or not, because it hadn't come up in the last couple talks about Felton Field and this. Okay.
Yeah, but the thing is this, there's always gonna be the 5-year plan for the town, and what are our big purchases this year, next year, the following year? And what they're planning for, how we're gonna fund that, be it borrowing money, grant money, you know, set aside budget money for it. They have to look at each of these pieces and figure out how they're gonna fit it in. And the committee, the capital plan committee needs to really fit that in a year where it fits how the money's flowing. What may, you know, may be that a debt's clearing off and they're gonna have more money to borrow, or it may be that, you know, we've been paying for 5 years and a certain amount of money on something, and that money's gonna be free up and we put it to that project the fall, and they'll know what years it's gonna fit in. It just helps plan for it. Doesn't mean we won't try to do something, but it's very hard to do things like on the spot. You know what I mean?
And don't get me wrong, part of that also was pulling in another committee in a public forum, because I'm trying to remind everybody in town we have these committees, and if we don't get participation, the committees die off and then we lose the benefit of the committee. Similar to the open space and recreation, I'm just kind of re-emphasizing, we have a lot of openings on committees. Capital Planning Committee currently isn't one of them, as I understand it, but I'm just kind of trying to make note that, hey, this entity exists and there's a purpose for it, and we appreciate those that volunteer, especially you guys as well, to do what you do. I don't know how much of a stipend, but that's still volunteer. So
Yeah,
it's just it's a volunteer as
Yeah,
well.
even at the stipends, it doesn't cover the
We'll
time
need
and the money,
something.
but.
Buy a couple lunches for the year and
But
enjoy the day.
Be creative and try to see what the finance says for what they think they might come up with. And just try to plan ahead for more, maybe do a piece of it this year, maybe we can look into grant money. If we do get that open space committee, that's the exact perfect thing to do. What a segue into the open space, cause that's the kind of thing you put on the open space if we're gonna improve that field, recreational area, by doing a fence and doing some other improvements down there, so that's.
Okay.
So even
Thank
if,
you.
even if it doesn't all get funded this year, it doesn't mean it won't, and just gotta keep planning for it. Alright, thanks for
I
coming.
missed my little catch up with the Christmas.
We'll see if we can get something on the warrants. Town meeting.
Yeah. 40 be a steep number, that's not.
Okay. All right, before I jump on another agenda item, is there a specific agenda item anybody in the crowd is currently here for?
Phil was here for the special event permit one.
Okay, let's
So I'll,
hit that one first, then that way we'll
Yes.
go through the rest as.
So I know Charlie and I we were speaking with Phil a few days ago about kind of what our special event permit process is. I know he has a few special event at the farm, and we're looking at kind of the sign-offs, and there were 2 sign-offs on there that we didn't think made a lot of I don't want to say sense, but didn't really fit in what the goal of the special event permit is, with the sign-offs from the conservation and planning offices, because their mission for their offices is basically based off of new construction and building and preserving wetlands and stuff in that regard. Special one-day events don't really fall under their purview for the most part. The purpose of the one-day event is really for the public safety aspect, for the police, fire, EMS, so that way they know what's going on, they can plan their activities. I thought it might be beneficial if we updated our policy that primarily that the sign-off on these special event permits be from those entities, but maybe not dragging it out to go in front of each commission just for a special event.
I understand that. I'll just start with my thoughts and then, of course, anybody else jump in. Because the special event permit process covers any particular special event that could occur, and sometimes with some of the races you've had, what does occur, depending on what's on the land, temporary structures may now end up in areas that might be considered wetlands or something where Conservation Commission should or shouldn't have a say. Or, so those are the things where I think that's why they were on the list. It might be easier to identify, are there temporary structures, or is there any intent to encroach upon or have travel across areas that would normally be considered restricted for permanent structures? If that box isn't checked, then it doesn't have to go before the planning board or the conservation. In other words, they don't have to see it if your special event's not requesting to do something that would really fall under their jurisdiction or their subject matter expert type knowledge. I would definitely understand that, like, there might be certain things, like if you check this, then these people have to be involved. And then if you check this, then they have to be involved, but if they're not checked, then they don't have to see those boards.
Yeah, it's just a matter of, kind of tightening up what our regulations are based off of, because, go in front of a board commission can take time to get on the agenda, to wait for the next meeting. A lot of times, some of these might not require that much scrutiny, really, when it's might be a little bit more, more of a plain and simple process. So I'm just, trying to think of ways that we can kind of make our special event permit process is kind of, less burdensome on the applicant.
What's the definition we have established for a special event that trips the requirement of this permit?
Don't know off the top of my head.
Because that would be
Unless
something
I
else,
also look at
that's
it.
something else to consider, because, depending on the size of these events certainly as well.
I know when it was originally established, we had a lot of discussion about what constitutes a special event permit. Is it activity? Is it the amount of people? Is it location? And it was really hard to put a specific, tone on events, like what constitutes a special event, because you could think about all the possibilities, but then all of a sudden, possibility A pops up, and we didn't really define it under that, so, or we didn't think event A with, 50 people constitutes a special event. Because you could have a road race that maybe 40 people show up to, but it requires some shutdown of the road, it could constitute emergency services. I know, working with the prior board, our concern was fed off of a particular event, where we weren't aware of the event, the town, meaning we weren't aware of it, permits weren't necessary, and the event had about 2,000 people. It required a lot of our emergency services to be tied up, where the prior board then said, we need to create this so that we can not control the event, but be prepared for that event and make sure that our emergency services weren't tied up. And the thought, like, when we threw out different ideas of what could happen, we could have the circus down at Felton Field. We would only need to just know that there was a circus there, so if an emergency call came in, we knew, our emergency people knew what they were
Can I
responding
interrupt you
to.
for a second? Is this getting to some point as to what the definition is, or no? That's all I'm looking for, I
I would like to,
I guess you don't need my input.
No,
Sorry.
No, it's
Sorry.
not to the point, what's the definition, was a
no,
simple
no,
question.
this is, I do recall actually at town meeting when they tried to implement a bylaw about it that failed because that same question came up. What is a special event? Who has the authority having jurisdiction? So should it be the planning board, should it be the select board and all of that? My understanding is generally a special event is any use of a parcel that's not normally acceptable under the existing licensing or zoning laws for that site, or occupancy if you have certain building occupancy. So the first step generally would be, it probably should go before the building department, who should know all those things and tell you this does or doesn't fit within your already approved use of that parcel via zoning bylaws, occupancy certificates, conservation commission information, because they're the ones that normally, if you put in a building permit, you request an application, they're the ones that still tell you if you've gotta go before the conservation commission. So I think, again, this would generally be something that would start with a quick check of, you're saying you're gonna do this, this, and this. My understanding is that's all allowed according to what's already there, so you don't need a special permit. That's how I would define special permit, but it's not
Once
defined.
again, my question though is, what is defined?
Yeah, it's an event open to the general public. It can be on public or private property. It may feature entertainment, amusements, food, and beverages. May be classified as a festival, concert, carnival, road race, parade, or walkathon. And then goes into the application process. That is what is
Just
defined.
being open to the general
Open to the
public, in other
general
words,
public.
not private invitation.
Right. That is-
Which is sometimes even scarier, because a complete private invitation could equal the same impact on the town as open to the general
I
public.
think we need to consider setting a definition for it that is definable and enforceable and is equal for everyone who applies, that this is the definition and you trip this standard or you don't. I don't like ambiguity in any laws or regulations. If anything that's brought to a court system, ambiguity is thrown out. If you can't define it clearly, it's invalid.
Understood. I would like
That's my
to
concern.
see what Phil has to say.
The definition is very clear. And in my opinion, this isn't for me, this is like Greg's car restoration at Felton Field. He's gotta go before the planning board, before the board of health, before the selectmen. All this stuff, and it takes months to do that. if somebody's gonna have a road race, I had a winter carnival that maybe 50 people were gonna come, that she had to go before all those boards, and it takes months. It's not pro-business to have to go through all this for a car show or something like that. These people that come out to my farm, I have to woo them in. Barry is the most difficult place on the planet Earth. They go to China, they go to Dubai, they go to every state in the United States, and you know what they tell me? Barry is the hardest place to put on a show, because they have to send somebody from Florida up here to go to the planning board. Why does the planning board is for, are you gonna put solar in, can we do a subdivision, can we do a 6-story house? Why is the planning board saying whether I can have a road race or a car show? That's my input. It's very not pro-business for the town. Yeah, it's checks and balances, but it's scaring people away. And it takes months to get an event. If you want to have an event next month, you can't do it in Barry. It's impossible to do it. Because they meet at this day and that's just passed, so then you do that one, and then somebody doesn't come to a meeting.
That's
and
part
then
of what I'm
it's-
asking, Phil, is, you know, if somebody wants to have an event next month, it's gonna be relatively small. You're not gonna have a 2,000 person event and plan it in less than a month. So if an event's large enough that it requires months of planning, there is time to go through this whole process. But there's gotta be a point where something's a much smaller event that this is not necessary. And I'll ask, for example, Felton Field does have horse shows. They have several trail rides and horse shows a year with dozens of vehicles, if not 50 trailers and trucks, and they go all through the roads in town. Do they apply for special permits for that?
They're supposed to be.
They're occupying town land, they have vehicles in there, they're selling food down there, they have people going on the roads and in the trails through the whole town. So how do we say that's okay? That, is it the level of activity isn't offensive, and this is why I don't think that definition is equitable, that's all.
My thought on that again is because my understanding, which obviously the wording of the bylaw, that's what you were reading.
That's the wording from the application.
Okay, the wording of the application doesn't fit what I was considering, and that is Felton Field's use, permanent use allowed, is events. So not every event should have to require it unless they're going outside the already approved boundary that they have. So in other words, it's like a blank statement, if you're gonna do this at this site, just keep doing it.
They leave the boundaries.
If they,
And they utilize, I'm saying, we need to look
I
at it.
understand, but that's a
We need to
different
look at
story,
it.
but I'm
We
just
need to
saying,
look
that's
at
why
it.
I
I
could see
agree.
someone might think Felton Field doesn't require a special permit, because they were given a permanent permit. But,
They have been for years.
When there is a public event, it is literally impossible to tell if you're gonna have 40 people or 4,000. It can't be written.
no,
So right now, it's any public event. I don't know how many are gonna come to these things. That's the thing.
and that's understood, because you're
That's
right.
what happened at Colebrook. They thought it was gonna be a small thing, and it was huge, and that's what brought this about. But there's no reason, if something like Colebrook happens again, you guys were on top of it. You didn't need those other boards to say, whoa, but last year that was, they're still gonna come before you guys for the event. It's all the planning board and all the other boards. You guys are still gonna have the same control, they're gonna ask you. But why should it take 3 different boards in 3 months to get that decision?
I would need to clarify again, so this special event permit process was instituted under what law or bylaw?
None, as far as I know, that was part of my objection to it. We voted it down at town meeting and this permit took place anyways. And I don't understand what gives us the right to,
A
Demand it.
suggestion, to make it easier, if they brought it to you, and then you look at it, have just check off lists, as how
Which
many
committees?
they anticipate,
See the
or
chief of police,
you know,
see
what are
this,
they
but you don't need to
gonna-
worry about everybody else.
what are they doing? a letter of what they're gonna do there, and then you decide if they need to go to conservation or planning. If you know the land where it's gonna be, and it's somebody that's held it every year with no problems, you should be able to just sign it.
I'm willing to entertain something.
Yeah, I think that's a logical idea, and then you don't have to go to all the committees unless you
Yeah.
say, you know, if Phil's gonna have 1,000 people, all right, we should have some ambulance there and police for the traffic and whatnot. But not necessarily planning, but possibly conservation, depending where it gets to be. In each event, like an event in the common, biggest concern, there's gonna be normally police, depending on the size, without having to go to absolutely everything.
What about something like an annual license? Just one or a series of events?
If
Oh,
they've got them scheduled.
We'd still come up to.
Yeah, you'd still have some of the
Yeah,
requirements.
the bigger issues is
I was
events
just
like that
thinking aloud,
is
yeah.
knowing ahead of time when they're coming for the traffic issues, and, cause obviously this, you know, like the busing for that, they do a
Yeah.
good job to get the cars all in one place. But that's a lot of traffic on buses, and if we weren't ready for it, it can make a good disruption. And if we had something else that planned the same time, and we didn't, you know, they just had a general permit, and we didn't know that day was going on, and something else occurred at the same time, we could be overwhelmed. So I kinda like that.
Could you send me whatever you can find that has any law backing the application of special permit process, and also send me a copy of the application? Well, the board, each of us, so we can all review it, and then maybe at the next meeting, come with some proposals on how to redraft the process that would still meet the needs, but obviously make it easier for someone asking to do it, to be able to do what they gotta do.
Yeah, I think if we do redraft something, and this is, as I am pretty sure, not an adopted town bylaw, that we should consider drafting something more reasonable, more definitive, and placing it on the article, on the warrant.
Yeah, well, exactly,
Because
we
I
may
don't
wanna
like-
consider that.
I don't like that this was shot down at town meeting and then it went forward.
Understood, but we'll move forward from here and do our best with
Well,
what we
that's
can.
all we can do.
So,
So as of now, any application has to go before the planning board.
right now,
Change.
we just gotta continue what's existing, but once we get through this and at the next meeting, we may be changing that completely and limiting who you gotta go see if it's not applicable to your type of event you're requesting. I don't wanna, until I really read through it all, I wouldn't wanna change that process right now because I gotta really get into it more. I don't wanna make a decision, or I wouldn't ask the board to make a decision without having the chance to truly see the potential repercussions if we somehow undermine something that actually had importance and I didn't have a chance to find out if a certain board brings to light a reason that I couldn't come up with why they should be involved. So at the moment, I would suggest we're sticking with what is, but our intent is to revise it and make it simpler and much more efficient in the application process than the approval process.
I think Claire has a good idea with that, with this, come to us and we'll see what committees are applicable, if any. And go from there and send it out, and there may be a way to have our office send it out, or have, if, you know, if it's police and fire, we can certainly contact them from our office to get the input with the application, so maybe someone could drop an application off and we can farm it out to those committees in a reasonable time. Or if the committees, I mean, obviously the committee needs to talk about it to meet, that's a difficult thing, you don't just have a committee head that can sign it.
And that's what I understand is his concern, because also sometimes I want to speak to the applicant, I'd better understand what isn't written or what. So it does drag it out and make it much harder for an applicant to hit every other committee's schedule of, okay, I'll hit Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, this week I can hit these 3 committees, but the next 2 don't meet for another 3 weeks. And I could understand the difficulty there, and then chasing down fire and police or whoever else.
The way it is now, you guys won't even see anything until it goes through the planning board, the board of
Right.
health. So right now, I got a guy that's gotta fly in from Florida to ask to present this to the planning board. And then when the board of health meets, they've gotta do that, and then the building inspector, and then once all that's checked off, then it gets on your desk.
Right.
So, if these races don't continue in Barry, I'm just saying, it's a very anti-business policy they have here.
Another thing we could try to institute is if each board thinks they're gonna wanna see the applicant, we create a meeting with representatives of each board so the applicant can present once. Doesn't have to be all the boards, but that might assist with this. If it's a special event, it's a special meeting. They request it, okay, on this Thursday, a week and a half from the application date, any and all that think they need to speak to the applicant will show up on this meeting date, and otherwise, base your decision on the paperwork submitted. I'm just suggesting, it could be something as, to at least help with that. Maybe you could reach out to see if anybody's interested in doing that for any particular applications that come in until we can clarify this process better.
Possibly
That might
even-
save some effort from at least some of the applicants you're speaking to.
On these applicants of Phil's, why can't you do a video conference? You could talk to them. The board could talk to them.
I think we're limited under the remote participation law.
We
We have
voted
to-
that in.
You did vote.
For the Board of
Okay.
Selectmen, but that doesn't necessarily mean for every board.
Possibly
I
we
think
could,
each board has to do it individually.
possibly we could notify the boards that we're having a meeting on that special permit, and then, and if they have any objections to concerns, they come to that meeting, and if not, then it's assumed that it's approved by their board or committee. And we can ask the committee to come to our meeting when we do that, if they have any concerns for it. And if they don't have any concerns for it, assuming we get it out to them in a timely manner, and then post it before we're gonna meet on it, they have the opportunity to come to our meeting on it and have input.
It seems to me it should start here, and then you guys decide whether it goes out to the other boards.
I think
The way
that's
it is
what we're,
now, it's set up really bad.
yeah, right now it's backwards.
Well, originally, it's still set up that it comes here, but then we send it to every board to get all the signatures before we sign it, so it goes to the town administrator's office.
No.
Then how come you were sending it out for the last permit,
That's
asking
just-
everybody?
whole-
Because
whole
I have people
process
that
is
come
just
into
not-
our office saying, I can't
It
get a
was
hold
denied
of
at
these
town meeting.
people. Can you help me?
What
So
office did
I-
they submit the application
By the
to?
town vote, it was denied.
The initial application has to start somewhere. What office or committee
And you
does
would
it
go
go to?
against a popular vote.
There is no, first.
What's that?
The special event permit application. Does it identify who they're supposed to submit that application to or what office?
Once completed to us.
No, when it starts, it's gotta be submitted somewhere. It shouldn't be completed and submitted somewhere.
Well, once it's filled.
Cause
out,
it says
to
you got
us, and then
60
we begin the
days, so
process.
how do you know when it starts if you don't, we only have 60 days to process it.
Either way, it's a cumbersome process, we gotta go through, we gotta revise it.
Right, okay, so anyway, I would suggest that if any department or board gets a request, that they please send out something saying that that request immediately has to come to the town administrator's office, to be shared with all offices, saying it was received on this day. And then maybe spread the word to us to see if we could set up one of those joint meetings I just mentioned. Until we can revise the process officially,
Phil,
That might-
did the applicant already submit?
Not the one that I'm talking about, there's gonna be two coming in.
We'll try to expedite the process on this side either way, if it comes in before we revise it, we'll get a joint meeting together, all right?
yeah, at least until we can formally
I
deal with
I think
the
we can do
written
better with it than it is,
regulation.
and if the town gets behind it
Thank
and
you very
votes to
much,
approve
Doug.
it, I'd feel a lot better about it than the town saying no, and then that happening anyways.
I think this can be cleaned up some.
Matt, could we discuss the amendment of the finance committee appointment bylaw?
Sure. Are you prepared?
I have the copies I wrote in the car, but I have a very good idea of what I did.
Okay.
Can I ask first? I'd like to know what the other two selectmen think of Mr. O'Sullivan's comments at the last selectmen's meeting, stating that he wasn't happy with some of the appointments, and that's the reason that we're having the bylaw amended. Is that right, Mr. O'Sullivan?
Yes,
So every bylaw that you don't like the people that were appointed, then we're gonna change.
no, we have, this is a specific committee where one individual appoints the whole committee. Most committees are formed by a consensus, they volunteer and they're selected by a group, or they're filled, like the Felton Field Committee, by election in seats, and same with the Board of Health. There's no redundancy in nothing other than a single person's opinion on who sits in this committee. The idea of a finance committee, at least according to the handbook we're given by the state of Massachusetts for the Selectmen's Guide, is that the finance committee is supposed to be really a consulting board for us to help us through financial matters. People that have knowledge in financial lending, in accounting, marketing, and all sorts of financial matters or business matters. And it would give us the opportunity, when people are placed in that, to make sure that they have some sort of background within those fields. You know, business managers, accountants, treasurers, bankers, investment brokers, a lot of things would be ideal to have. Not that we'll get all those, but we'd like to see, or I would like to see, people's backgrounds more in the financial line to be on the finance committee.
So the selectmen have the final say, and you all three have that background to make that final say on the budget?
The selectmen would have the right to say, yes, we'd like that person, or no, pick another one.
No,
That-
no, no,
that-
no.
that's
She's
what I was
speaking of the
saying.
budget presented to
No,
town.
okay.
Well, the budget, by nature of one of the selectmen duties by the state, is that we set the budget for the town. That's
Right.
part of what we're elected to
The
do.
question was, do the three of you all have the background that you're asking that the finance committee members have?
I do,
Okay, well,
but,
Yes,
No.
but that doesn't matter. This is we're elected by the town to do this task.
It wasn't nearly as much the members of the finance committee currently, do they have the appropriate knowledge for the position they've been asked to, or they've offered to do? Okay, just to clarify, the original point that came up from Greg was, it's the only committee that's appointed by one individual. Everybody else that is on a committee or on a board is either elected by the town or appointed by a committee of three or more. And that's why the first thought about maybe we should review the bylaw came up. Second, there are no rules in the bylaw or in state law that states if a position is vacant because someone retires from the committee, that necessarily has to be held open, just like an employee. We can't just hire the first person that puts in an appointment. We gotta usually open it up for a certain period of time, saying we're accepting applications, to allow multiple people to come in. I'm not saying that the current moderator even had that choice, because we all know that there's not a lot of applications lining up that fit within our bylaws right now that he could choose from. So even if we left it open, it doesn't mean that he wouldn't have still chosen the same person, or someone else might have applied. But it's more to the process of identifying the people that isn't at all identified in the bylaw. So it's a completely subjective process outside of you can't work for the town. That's the only regulation we have on it. So that's the only, it has nothing to do with the knowledge or character or anything of the current members of the board.
well, I'm.
That you asked me, you did ask me what was my opinion about Greg's thoughts, and does that mean a bylaw should be rewritten every time someone doesn't like somebody on a board? And my opinion is, it wasn't about who's on the board, it was about the process of how that person gets on the board that I agreed should be reviewed. Didn't necessarily mean it should make it to the warrant for a bylaw revision, but I definitely saw his point. I wanted to see what he had to say about what he's recommending as changes. And then possibly, yes, that may or may not be something we, the board, agree to put on the warrant as a bylaw to be approved by the town. Which again, would still just be approved by the town, not us.
Well, Mr. O'Sullivan's comments were, to boil it down, he wasn't happy with some of the appointments, and that was the reason why he was having his bylaw changed.
I cannot speak to his motivation, nor am I gonna knock his motivation, because that's his. And there's a balance of the three individuals on this board to bring in different perspectives. What I, in response to his position, was saying is, I do see how we might be able to improve on the process. So I'm willing to consider what you're offering. Very similar to other people that have come before us, said, I would like to see this on a ballot or on a warrant. I may not have agreed with it, but I didn't want to prevent the town from making that decision because I had the ability to block it versus allow the town to review and make a decision. Similar to Greg, if he wants to do this, and I can't see something that's really crazy or is gonna undermine other laws or bylaws or keep the town out of things, I would encourage presenting something in front of the town so the town can make that decision when it's in an appropriate and properly reviewed process. I wouldn't just throw something on the warrant, but I would like to review it and then consider it, and then potentially we, the board, may put it on a warrant. So I don't personally, and I'm not speaking for Charlie or anybody else up here, always consider something because of how it was presented or from whom it was presented. I try to listen to the potential of what's being brought up and how else I see that, yes, I can see how this may or may not be clear, or maybe we aren't fitting in certain things that probably should be in there. Outside of the original commenters' comments or thoughts, they bring something to my mind, I'm like, you know what, I do believe that's something that we could consider. And he's been in the process of drafting some things to present so we could truly review it.
Now, I don't know how many years ago it was, when they changed the bylaw to have the moderator appoint all the time. It used to be that if someone left on the finance committee board, the finance committee themselves would accept applications and choose the one to fill out. Paul would only do the one in the June.
Oh, the fill in the recurring.
Right, it's been amended in the past clearly, and the initial
And when
involvement was the seventh member was appointed by the finance committee themselves, actually, until the annual meeting.
When it went down to just Paul, and you kinda had to wait until, you know, he got around to doing it and stuff, it made it hard, where you could have, you know, the finance committee during the year could appoint members.
I do remember that.
Which I think, to me, it sounded better than having him appointed and have to wait for him. I don't know whether they had to wait for the annual meeting, I think they did.
It says he points at annual meeting, but any vacancies will be filled by the moderator. It doesn't say when they'll be filled by the moderator, but it
wasn't-
says they'll be filled by the moderator.
That wasn't the way it was.
Right,
until
it's
a few
definitely been
years
amended.
ago.
So it's already changed once is all you're saying. There was a
Yeah.
different process prior.
The only amendment I proposed, to get back to the original discussion on that, was that in section, I wanna say it's section 2, it's chapter 18, section 2, just add a sentence in the end that just says that all new appointees will be approved by a majority vote of the selectmen prior to being qualified, because it says that once they're appointed and they are qualified, I don't know what that means, if it just means that they're vetted to make sure they don't, there's no definition there on what the qualification is, but it says before they're qualified, they get a majority vote of the selectmen. And the same thing in the next section, I think 3 was the next section, that says that he appoints, in the vacancies, the moderator appoints, and just say that the appointees will be confirmed by a majority of the board, the select board vote.
You don't want the selectmen appointing.
No, they're not,
finance committee member.
they're not appointing, they're
Yeah, but you don't
affirming.
want to be involved. This is where you're getting.
This is more the checks and
crossed.
balance that I can see what she's saying
Because
is, they're
The
our
finance
advisory board
committee
telling us what we don't
advised
wanna
the
hear.
selectmen.
right.
We don't want you appointing a person on the finance committee that's gonna side with what you want.
We're not appointing, but that's the thing, it's not up to us to appoint, it's up to the moderator still to appoint, but we have to, if we're gonna get advice from somebody, you've gotta be advice from somebody you want the advice from,
Yeah, but
you know what I mean?
you can't be a board that's gonna agree that yes, this finance committee can come on. You got a conflict, you can't do that.
I don't see how it's a conflict at all.
It
It's-
is,
it's,
because the finance committee is advising you
mhm.
on how you should vote on the budget. You could, not saying you would, but somebody might appoint who they wanted or approve who they wanted on the finance
Certainly, right
committee.
now, we have one person that can do exactly that with no checks, and that's why I
know,
wanna have
that isn't,
a check.
But I'm saying it can't be the selectman. It's gotta be a non-partial person. Or
I-
board
I-
or something.
I don't know legally if it cannot be a selectman. I think it could be the administrator. In other towns, it can be a town manager. I think it can be whatever is designated by the town as the appointees. I don't think there's any legal conflict in it. And I don't see any conflict in wanting to have someone to advise us that we want the advice of. And to continue with Kathy's question, is everybody here qualified to speak in financial matters? Probably not. All the more reason we want to make sure we have people giving us advice that have that background that we trust in. And that's why I wanted to have the select board.
I do, and even if
If you read
we're
the
all
handbook, that's
perfect
what it is.
humans and we were gonna make the right decision that's best for the town in every case and never let our personal feelings get in the way, it still leaves a perception of a conflict if we are too involved in identifying who can or cannot be appointed to the finance committee. Because they are, in a way, supposed to be autonomous to us so they can tell us what they think without worrying about our ability to control their position or their ability to fit that position. So I'm just suggesting, I understand the perception, which is as strong legally as the reality in many cases. So I do believe it's possible that instead what we could do is, if you think about it, is we try to identify a list of criteria, and then if you write the bylaw, you would say that the finance committee would choose an appointee that fits this general criteria and make recommendations on who's best and work with the appointment of the moderator based on the finance committee's recommendation of the applications received. But they're basing it not just on their personal opinion, they're basing it also on a certain set criteria the select board asked them to look for. So in other words, it's again, all their judgment on whether they believe that person fits the criteria, but we at least do have a say in, we're looking for this type of quality, we're looking for this type, or this type, or this type, because each can bring their own benefit to the committee.
There's several backgrounds.
So I'm just thinking maybe that's more where we get involved, where we can identify what we're looking for, and then they can take that and try to act on it.
I think the proper analogy of how we look at this is we're not picking at all, and this is more like a jury selection. Lawyers don't go into a jury pool and say, hey, Your Honor, these are the 5 people I want to bring into this jury, these 12 people. It doesn't work that way at all. The pool comes in, they draw by lots, and these are the people that are up for grabs. And the attorneys have the chance to say, I'm not comfortable with that person on there. And they dismiss them, and that's what I'm saying. Not that we ever get to suggest anyone that goes to the committee, because it wouldn't be us. It would still be the moderator selecting people or putting people forward. And we would just have the chance, like any attorney does in any legal case, to release someone and say, no, I don't want that person. Not that we get to choose anyone, not that we get to put anyone forward in any way, shape, or form, because we don't, and I'm not suggesting we should. And that's why I'm saying it's not something that we're going to pick and choose and put someone in there that we want. We have no say over who steps up and volunteers and no say over who the moderator appoints. We should just have the ability to say, I'm really hoping to see someone with this type of background. Why don't we wait? Or why don't we say no to this for now? And that would give us the ability to delay and wait to see if we can get another applicant in. It doesn't give us, in the perception, to think there's a perception that would give us some sort of power to select people. I don't see it. I don't see any power to select anyone or get it. We can't get anyone to volunteer. We can't get the moderator. Even if we can tell the moderator, here's the 6 people we want, he could say, yeah, I'm not going to appoint any of those 6. That's up to him. We just have the opportunity to say that's not who we want right now because whatever the background. Now, if we wanna set our own
I
criteria up,
got you, just,
we could, to make that process better, and more transparent, we could establish a criteria that we're looking for and hold that criteria. When we're evaluating if we want to accept someone on the committee or not, we look at that person against that criteria, and that's what our judgment's based on. I'm fine with that,
all right.
because that's what I'm looking
I would
for
just-
is qualifications, but it's not, it's.
I would like to give Kathy the floor now.
Yeah.
I hear your point.
I'd like to say, Matt, you said earlier tonight that you can't get people to volunteer as it is. If you make a list like that, who in town is gonna volunteer? You'll not
That's-
get the people
I
that
think our
volunteer
biggest
and know
challenge
what it is.
right now, and I'm not even speaking to the members on the finance committee and what you do or don't bring. Okay, so, just so you know, and I think all of you know, there's very little I know about your history and what you've done in life to know what you're bringing to the table at the finance committee. So I don't know, you could be an accountant for all I know. You've kind of spoke to your accounting history since I've been talking with, so I've learned a little from you just from interacting in the meetings. But what I'm trying to say is, I am not saying anything right now that has anything to do with the members of the current committee. But what I am saying is, even if we had questions about those that are on the committee or those that want to be on the committee, we currently have nobody in line to contest the members that are already there. It's not like we've got 5 applicants saying, I would like to be on the committee next.
Well, there's
So-
nothing in my proposal to talk about removing people that are on the committee. Let's be
Wait,
clear about that.
just to
That's not-
clarify,
that's
you
not-
just stated creating criteria that
Right.
would allow us to say, we don't want them, so they don't get to be in the pool of picking.
That's until once they're vetted and they're on the committee, they're on the committee, period, they have a term on the
No,
committee.
once they're on the committee, but how do they get to the committee based on what you just stated?
But what I'm saying is the committee already exists, so we're not touching the committee. I'm saying future appointments, we have the opportunity to say yes or no according to the list that we'd like to vet them by, to try to,
But
get
you're
a type
assuming
of
you have
background
more
we
than
want.
one person to look at.
Maybe we do, maybe we don't.
Right, but I understand the point she's
And-
bringing up is,
right, and maybe this
everything you're
gives us-
talking about,
And maybe it gives us a chance to delay that appointment, as you've talked to. Maybe it says, let's not just fill it right now. If someone walks in and says, yep, I'm an investment banker and I've done, I work for Fidelity Life and I have all this background, all right, we'll take that person and fill the spot. If someone else comes in and says, I've never really done much and I'm unemployed and I didn't finish high school and I don't know anything about math, but I'd like to get on there for fun, we might say, why don't we wait and pass over this candidate and see if someone comes along that's better fitted educational-wise and background-wise for that position.
I understand your point, but my bigger concern is anytime you take someone that's willing to fill an empty vacant position, that's primarily a volunteer position, no matter what stipend's involved, and you turn them away, then you turn away more and more of the town saying, I don't want to participate in this committee or that committee, because they expect, a lot of people don't have the confidence that they know what they're bringing to the table, but when they show up, they actually have something to bring. But if we don't even let them show up because they don't know how to convince us that they belong without actually working the job, then we're actually undermining the potential of getting people in that can really contribute, because they don't know how to present themselves that fit your criteria, yet maybe they are someone that, without experience, is also someone that has a sharp mind. And I'm just bringing it up, so we gotta be careful,
And
that's
what
all,
we'd have to
it's just
consider.
discussion today.
That's what we'd have to consider criteria, but if I needed brakes fixed in my car, and my electrician said, hey, I'll do your brakes for you, I might wanna question,
Understood, I
why
just-
should I trust him to do that task for me?
Go ahead, Claire.
Yes. You don't need someone on a finance committee that has financial background. A person with financial background may not help you in it. You need some of the ordinary people to come in and give their opinion, how they feel about it, and they learn. Now, I've been on the committee over 20 years, and I've seen a lot of people come through. And a lot of people don't have the accounting background, but they have given a lot to that committee. And they may come out with something that you wouldn't even think of, because you're looking at the numbers, but they see something different. It's entirely, you can use anybody on that committee.
All right, just to clarify, this was just an initial discussion. Outside of bringing up another way of wording the same general point that we've already brought tonight, is there anything somebody has to add that hasn't already been generally discussed?
I just wanna make a statement, so for, I think it was 2 years, Claire can correct, we had almost no quorum
Yeah.
for finance. And we had couple people, cause people kinda came and gone and stepped up, and without those people stepping up, and they came to the table and said, I really don't have the background, but I knew you guys needed help in order to have a quorum. And they helped the finance committee have meetings. Without those people stepping up, and if you had criteria like you're stating, those people wouldn't have been eligible, which means the finance committee would not have had a quorum at that time. So we're
Okay.
thankful that they
And
did
it's
step
their
up.
town, this is their town. So if they're put on that committee, they do the best for their town. Whether they are an accountant or a banker or a doctor, they do it the best for their town.
Okay, Trav, you've been quiet, so yes, please.
Yeah, let me just state my opinion on this. I have two different views and they both tie together. Having been on the board on and off for quite some time, I believe very strongly that if a board member wants something placed on the town meeting warrant, it should be allowed to go on. That said, doesn't necessarily mean I'm gonna agree with it, but, I do believe Greg's right to bring something forward, place it on the warrant. I have a long history of supporting that, so, I'll have to see what he has, but, my inclination is to say I don't probably agree with you on it, but I do believe very strongly you should be able to place this on if you wish to have it considered by the voters. And that,
My
I
intent was
believe,
to bring it forward so we could discuss it further in
yeah, I understand.
alter it. I'm trying to bring something
Yeah,
forward as a
I
starting
understand.
point.
I
And I
understand,
would
but.
not expect anything I write to go on as verbatim as last time the recall officers, I removed it because you guys didn't support it.
Mhm.
I want the board to work and support it together or it doesn't go on. And
Yeah.
I will never ask to have it put on if it doesn't have
But
support.
I just wanted you to know my
No,
opinion.
no, I understand. And like I said, we've talked about a lot of things already tonight.
Yeah.
Other possibilities other than, maybe a different group could vet it. I just like to see more than one individual put together a committee. I mean, these could be elected positions. In some towns they are. They're elected positions. And you go in front of the meeting and you're elected to that spot. The bylaw could be changed to that, but that's an extreme change.
Mhm.
Before we go to a whole elected position, maybe they're appointed at town meeting and the town votes to accept the person. Simple as that. The moderator appoints and the town affirms them on the floor on the spot.
That's how it's done.
No, the moderator just appoints. It's not voted by the town.
Yes, it
Yes,
is.
it is, it's one of the
Yes,
first
it
articles.
is. He says it at the end. He always appoints.
It's the first
committee.
article, yeah, it's to appoint, it's one
And
of the
he
first.
It's supposed to be the
appoints
end.
them
He's supposed to
and
appoint
says,
at the end of the
Is it
end.
accepted by the town? Every year he has said that.
I don't recall ever having a town vote
That may
on
be
it.
the case, but I don't think there's any law requiring that.
No, but he does it.
I don't recall reading one. I'm not saying there isn't.
But
I've
that-
tried
that's
real
another-
hard and I've looked and realized I'm wrong.
That's
A lot
another
of
way to
this.
look at this. The law that says appointments doesn't say it's done that way. The law says he appoints, period. That's how the bylaw reads. I apologize for not bringing them, I said they're literally in the car, but they're handwritten, not typed.
And that's fine.
But once again, that's not even the way to make the change. If there's that much concern, and I really don't see a concern from the board making an affirmation, but it could be included in the bylaw that, not at the termination, but at the last part of the town meeting, the committee members are appointed, that the town would vote on each appointment. I think that's fair.
And
That
I've
way,
got to
that way.
clarify the rolling, because not every position technically is a one-year position, I don't
No,
believe.
they're
based
three.
on our- Right, so,
I believe it was either 2 or 3 rounds
yeah.
of 3-year positions. I think it's 2-2-2.
So, right.
But it might be 2-2-2 and then 1. And originally there's creation of 6, and then the finance committee themselves appointed a 7th until the next town meeting. And then it rolled into the process. But some sort of affirmation outside of a single appointing body is all I'm saying. So it doesn't have to be this body. If we wanted to work on that and say that it will be formally proposed for a vote of the town, or a majority vote at town meeting, I'm absolutely fine with that. I think that's a reasonable way to get, and like we said, it's our town, it's everyone's town. Let the body speak on it, then I'm fine with that. The idea is to get more than one person to set up a committee.
All right, I would like to continue this to another meeting and move on to another agenda item. I think we got a lot out today. Good points, so that we can
Yeah, but this is
really
how,
work on
this
it.
is how it progresses. Even if I brought the paper in,
We're still talking about
we're
it.
already off of what I put down and looking towards a different way to do it, but that's the intent. And I'd like to see us work on that, once again, to try to get something that we can put out there for people to vote on and try to give people the opportunity to vote warrants.
Before everybody goes to sleep or turns off their TV at home, I really want to get to the annual town meeting date, warrant public hearing set date, that agenda item. I consider it rather important that we get this out, start advertising and letting everybody know what's going on. There's a lot of key items that are going to be on this annual town meeting warrant outside of the financial side of it. And so I want to make sure that we can spread the word. We have some proposed dates. I would like to start from the end and work backwards. So I know that the recommendation was June 19th, 2018, which is the third Tuesday in June, which is generally right about the same annual period of time we set it. Anybody have a motion or?
Sure, I'll make a motion that we set the annual town meeting for June 19th, 2018.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All right. Call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We spread that, June 19th, 2018. We'll find out if a lot of people want to come. We may have to move it, so do we think a lot of people are going to show up this time, or is it going to be another little nobody shows up?
But it also be very good time.
I know I'm kind of like egging them on and being a little sarcastic, but if you really want to be involved, you need to show up.
For the younger families in town, they have problems sometimes with the time, because a lot of them work out of town, and to get home and get up here. And then they also need babysitter.
I know other towns do it on a Saturday. Are you suggesting that to get a true town, a Saturday might be a better event?
It used to be on a Saturday and they moved it.
Yeah.
Because I know
I
I
don't know why.
would love to
I
get
can tell
home
you
before
why.
midnight, and these meetings rarely let that happen.
I can tell
So-
You don't
you,
want to say.
I can tell you why.
I'm willing to
I was on the
reconsider
board
this
when
if
we
we're
did it on
thinking
Saturday.
about a non-Tuesday. I'm willing to reconsider if we think a Saturday might be more appropriate.
We've had it on Saturdays, and actually, we haven't had any more people show up. There's conflicts on Saturdays, just as there.
Yeah,
Okay.
the sports.
And also, if you think the meeting is long now,
Oh, yeah.
it is extremely long on a Saturday. I mean, we would start at 1 o'clock and it would be like 8 o'clock at night before we get done. Not that, who knows the reason, but we shifted over because we weren't getting good attendance because there were so many
That's
conflicts.
a problem, we get out so late, if we make it later, some of these
The
run.
last few town meetings haven't been that late.
No,
I've
but
been amazed.
there's conflicts on Saturdays too. I mean, Little
Okay.
League and this and that.
But maybe look to.
Would,
Of course, they don't want their kids out late
You
either.
can
Do they-
try it again.
Are there volunteers that help with, like, watching kids or something during our meetings? Because I don't have kids, I wouldn't know to think to
We
ask.
used to do it on a Monday.
I'm just wondering, would it be helpful if we try to look to find out if somebody's willing to use a side room and help watch kids, if that would get other parents out here?
Maybe the school put something out if there's
So it exists, or
With Sam, he wanted
we're not
to
sure
serve
if it
food.
exists, so maybe we should just reach out to find out. 'Cause I would like to know if they do it. It's another thing to
What
advertise.
time do we
for.
normally start, 6 or 7?
Kiwanis Society?
7?
The kids that have to
6:30, I
do
think
the
we moved it
community
to.
Service stuff?
We can move it to 7 o'clock, but.
Yeah.
So I would just like us to
That's-
find out if that happens, if not, find out why. If so, just confirm it so that we might be able to tell people that it exists if they're not familiar that it exists. Don't get me wrong, if you have kids in school, you probably already know, but if you don't, or if they don't go to school locally, you may want to know that something's there if you wanna come in, and it's more about watching your kid as you're concerned, your child. I'm an uncle that,
If you can somehow get the word out and ask them for suggestions, what would help you get to the town meeting?
well, the other thing I wanna look into is what can we do to potentially look at assisting people to get here, to drive here, to bus here, to whatever. I know like the senior center might be able to coordinate the elder bus to help some seniors get there if they can't drive. So this is something else. I think it's worth doing some outreach. I'd like to see as much as we can do to get town involvement in this, because not that every meeting doesn't have something really important to a lot of people, but I know this one's a big one.
Well,
And I wanna get as many people there as possible so they know they have a voice.
we have to consider, since we had the marijuana issues that were voted on at, on the ballot, they now need to be affirmed at town meeting. It's not unlikely that the same 518 people that wanted to come out and have say on that may want say at the town meeting, which would make it a very busy town meeting for us. I don't know if that many people fit in that auditorium.
Well, that's
that-
why I
that's
don't
what
wanna
my
say
concern
where
would be.
it's at,
How
we just
much-
set the date, cause
Right.
we gotta look at the potential.
We could potentially have a lot of people. One of my comments to people in public media that were going on about that issue, and I said, well, from what we have to assume from the vote is that 3,100 people in town decided they wanted to have no input on it and really don't care. Whether that's the truth or not, we can only assume it is because they didn't go vote one way or the other in this issue. Doesn't mean they just don't care, it means they may have no preference, so they chose not to have a say. But clearly 500 people had say, and most of those people, I think very few abstained from these topics. I think most of these were voted on. So I'd be surprised if we don't draw a hefty sized crowd because of that, which will draw the meeting out in general,
So going back to that, we just approved
the date,
June 19th, 2018.
date and time to be announced.
Location and time to be announced.
That's right, sorry, location time.
I've secured Ruggles Lane School already for this.
And we may have to
We may not
unsecure it
fit.
if we think we need a larger venue,
I'm just letting you know.
so I
Do
appreciate
you
it.
know the capacity there we have, Faye?
Yeah.
Any idea
So-
capacity?
We just need to review potential numbers. I know, I've been told that historically at times when you have had larger ones, you've moved to the high school for certain big, or you might move to the high school for certain larger ones. I'm just saying, I don't know, but I don't wanna end up where we end up with 700 people thinking this matters to them, and we can't all fit them in the place and actually let them hear and be a part of the meeting. So we've gotta just have plans in case we actually have a turnout that surprises me versus the standard 198 people that come out and represent the entire town, or whatever it is that shows up at town meeting, cause it's usually not 500.
Right.
But if we get 500, they're not fitting in Ruggles Auditorium.
I think it's
or
reasonable to
cafeteria or
expect
gym
that.
or whatever we call it.
Get you a special event permit, figure it out.
Exactly. It's an open invitation. So that being the case, now we're gonna work backwards. If I'm correct, we have a public hearing that we normally set up a week or two prior to discuss the budget. The recommendation from the town administrator is June 6, 2018, which is a Wednesday.
You don't need to vote on that now, to set that, because things can
D-Day,
change,
by
so.
the way.
Okay.
Is that a,
We can just announce that
is
we're
that a
ready for it.
significant thing?
What's that?
Is D-Day, the anniversary
Oh,
of
yeah.
D-Day?
We can
We have a
announce that
budget
when
hearing.
we're ready.
Okay, so that's, we'll table that.
It might be good to put that date out there and maybe we'll get more people at the public hearing.
I think that's why Andrew and I kind of talked about dates when we were looking at the calendar and came up with that date for a public hearing. It seems to be the most workable day.
Yeah,
um, giving the time it takes to, once they vote on the warrant, put it together,
yeah,
you know, the process, that kind of
Yeah.
fits in there, so we're hoping we can keep that date, but
yeah.
anything could happen.
Okay.
I'll
And
put it in and.
to clarify, this is strictly the budget side of the public hearing, right? This isn't every article and discussion on every article, or is
Every
it?
article.
It's every
It's
article.
every article.
All right, so
Yeah.
we want to set this date.
Yeah.
Is there any reason why setting this date is not a good date? Okay,
We
again,
can't-
we have
we-
not set venue, but we will set,
It's senior center.
anybody want to make a motion?
Sure, I'll
Well,
make,
we may change it again if we think lots of people want to.
I'll make a motion to have a public hearing on June 6, 2018, to go over the warrant and all the articles and budget.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Call for vote?
All right?
Aye. Public hearing to discuss all the articles on the warrant will be set for June 6, 2018. Based on potential numbers that may want to be there to discuss things like the recreational marijuana bylaws. I believe there's some solar bylaws coming up for residential zoning. Guarantee there'll be a handful of other little bylaws that may come up based on even what we're presenting on from our board or potentially presenting. The next date, we'll figure it out. It's not all that key, but internally, the recommendation is that we would vote on all the warrant items May 21st. That'll end up on the agenda for confirmation, but I don't believe that's something we should really hold ourselves to by voting on it now. We'll see what happens when we open the warrant and what actually comes our way. Prior to that, the recommendation is to open the warrant as of today and close it as of May 10th, which gives us not quite 3 weeks, right about 3 weeks. This is the period of time that people can submit requests to have items on the warrant, but it does not guarantee you get on the warrant without certain signed petitions. Otherwise, it's simply a request through the Board of Selectmen, and we will review and potentially vote to put it on the warrant. That would officially start today if we vote on it, and end on May 10th. Do I have a motion?
I make a motion, we open a warrant today, April 17, 2018, at the close of this meeting, and the warrant shall close on May 10, 2018 at midnight.
I'll second that. They can do it by signatures still,
Right.
10 signatures.
automatically.
10 signatures for this annual
How many?
warrant. 10.
10?
I believe it's only 10.
Yeah.
It's a lot less for the annual than
Right,
the
10,
special.
10, 10 for this. Easy to do.
Further discussion? All right, to reiterate, if you definitely want it on the warrant, you do have a little time to go get signatures and take it out of our hands as to whether it lands on the warrant or not. Work with the town clerk to make sure you understand you have the right signature forms and you're following the right process. That's my recommendation. Otherwise, May 10th, 2018, midnight closes the open warrant period. Any further discussion? You got something to add?
Aye.
Hello. Call for vote.
All right,
All right?
Aye.
That meeting set.
The 19th. I heard you slipped in. You tried to get out of it, I know.
I make it out of it.
What happens if you're on vacation that week? Do we just assign somebody as moderator? Just curious about that process, actually. All right.
Did I miss the discussion on the finance committee yet?
You did.
Yep.
Ah,
It just tabled things. There's further discussion. No true draft is written.
all right.
Just talking about it.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, you too. Next item. Let me make sure I cover, okay. We have What I would like to, no, we didn't.
It was,
Okay.
I'd like to actually hit the code red policy and procedures. We'll deal with the other like more administrative activities later, but I think, I've read it. I like the idea. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to read the draft that was submitted.
I just have one quick change, I just, at the bottom of where, or kinda like in the middle where it said Berry Community Outreach Procedures, and there was that underlined section,
Yeah,
where it says should maybe submitted directly to RACC. It should be to the town administrator, or to the RACC or the town administrator. That was just what I was discussing with the chief. He just wanted to make sure some stuff was being kept in-house and not necessarily being approved by,
oh, so
yeah,
may be submitted directly to the town administrator,
yeah,
Okay.
not
Cause it's,
RACC.
yeah,
right,
cause it says town administrator above it.
right.
Scribe form to the town administrator for review and approval. And they just wanna change it to town administrator again down the bottom.
Yeah, yeah. Pretty much, he just wants to make sure that all approvals are kind of kept on our side of the fence.
These are
Last week, no pen, this
non-emergency.
week it doesn't work.
If I read this right, this general community outreach notification is more about just helping spread the word about things that may be going on in town. It's gotta go through him to have a little bit of a filter, so it doesn't end up a special permit event that doesn't have a special permit.
Basically, it's to keep it from, you know, it being
gossip
so
page.
overly utilized that people just stop answering the phone when they see the phone number come up.
Yep.
So, if, or at least filtering to know that it's pertinent information, if the town needs to know through this media, and that it's not just being put out so often that it's white noise what you're getting.
One of my recommendations would be to notify the town about the town meeting through
Yes.
this process,
Yeah.
because we can reach a lot more people through that process if they sign up to the Code Red system requesting to be a part of this.
Right.
I have a request on it. Will it tell you that it's a code red?
It all comes from the same number.
Yes, and that doesn't
It's an
say,
800.
so if you get a number.
No, it does. On my cell phone, it comes up code red.
It didn't come up as anything on mine. The police chief, when I was down in Maryland, put a thing out, and it was just a number. And of course, I don't answer numbers.
A lot of
does leave a
times,
voicemail.
right, a lot of times they won't put the number, like the actual physical number, because they don't want the dispatch center to be inundated with calls, because they got a missed call. You know, a lot of people say, well, I'll just let that go to voicemail, I'll call it back. You know, if people see a number, they let it roll to voicemail, they'll get the voicemail. But the Code Red system also allows you to do the voice and text and email. So, you know, if you don't get the voicemail, you should get the text message or the email.
Yeah, mine comes up and it says code red, and I don't have it programmed in my phone as code
I
red, you
was
know?
gonna say, because I didn't, and I just kind of ignored it and thought, I'll get it later, but that's not, it's defeating the whole purpose of it. If it's
So,
something.
If it's
just
urgent,
to
yeah.
clarify, the Code Red system, say community outreach versus emergency versus, question I have is, are there separate lists of individuals signing up for this type of communication versus that? Or is it, if you're on the list, you get a community outreach just like you get an emergency?
You have the opportunity to opt out of the community outreach notifications through the Code Red system. You can't opt out of emergency notifications.
Gotcha, okay.
So,
So, I would suggest for those that have the capability to provide a text or an email, because that information more likely will provide some type of heading that says community outreach, please read the following versus an impending emergency or this is happening, take action right away. I'm not sure, I think that's gonna be a standard template that they'll work through or have already worked through. But the written word obviously is easier to present to someone. This is a notification of a community event versus the, whatever you see on the TV when they're testing the emergency system.
Yeah,
So-
a lot of these, you know, we do have kind of a lot of these procedures just kind of in place verbally. I just think it's important we have it, you know, that we
Yeah.
do have it written.
Do we have any further discussion?
Maybe, I don't know if it does come across code red, could it come across as amber or something, or yellow if it was a community outreach versus, so there may be, other than, you know what I mean, there may be something up the front that defines it as an emergency versus an outreach. Maybe a simple
Yeah, I mean,
change in
more,
how it's put out. If we're already separating
on
them.
the town, or on the text side of it, I know it kind of delegates that differently. You'll see it kind of like in a quotation at the start between that and the email. The phone, I think, is the same template either way. It's just
So
the voice of the
introduction
person that says, this is an this is an emergency notification, whatever the information is.
Not as
That's
crucial,
the-
not as crucial as the fact that they can opt out of the public notices if they want is, I think, the most important part. That they're gonna get the emergency and they don't have to get the white noise if they don't want it, the other things.
And that's why
Curious if it would
the
separate.
non-emergency stuff still has to go through the town administrator. Because we also want those people that are signed up for both services to not stop listening to the emergency ones because they're tired of somebody always saying, oh, and there's a yard sale down the street. And then next week there's a yard sale on this street. And then there's a 25-person gathering to, you know, have a memorial for something over here. So it is, this whole policy and by funneling through the town administrator is intended to help control the amount of times you're being contacted through this system. So you don't become blind or deaf to the,
It's both to try to help promote, utilize it too, because it is being underutilized. The fact that we didn't use it for the town election's a shame. That's on me. I should have probably brought that forward. But now that we have this in place, hopefully we can utilize it better.
Andrew, is it the same number used all the time?
Yes.
Okay, because I might have blocked that.
That defeats
But that's
all.
what I
you
do.
can call the non-emergency
Here's the thought, though.
RECC and they'll tell
As
you
far
what number
as-
it is, and then you can find out if
We
you blocked it or
actually
not.
do. If you go on the town website, we actually have it posted right on there. A new notification comes out, it's automatically posted. to the website.
Because I could put that in my contacts and things, so I know.
Speaking of things people might wanna get on there, like yard sales and stuff like that, no, seriously, what if you had a community section on the town's page that once again you administered, so they put the similar request to you that like, oh yeah, there's gonna be a yard sale at this address, and maybe they can't put it on, but they could ask you, and you could stick that on the community section of the
I
town
know
page.
on our residents page, anytime that anybody's reached out to me that there's a community, program or a website that they want, that they'd like to have the town put on, I've put it under our residents section.
Great.
Oh, links to
Yeah.
another,
So
okay.
maybe some way to publicize that, so people know if they did wanna put something out, we can get a way that gets more people going to our page on a regular basis to look at things, and maybe they'll keep open meetings or other stuff better if they're visiting there for, hey, what can I do this weekend, what's going on locally, and there it is.
Yeah, it's hard to kind of maintain a calendar of all that stuff, because that almost turns into a full-time job where everybody's like, well, I want this, I want that, I want this. You're almost better off just providing the link to, if you wanna know what's going on with all these members, here's one central place.
So, do we have a motion to accept the policy and procedure for non-emergency code red notifications?
I'll make that as a motion, as listed.
Okay.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? I'll call for a vote.
Aye.
Aye. Just include that little reference to take out RECC and put in the town administrator. Please.
Yeah, it was assumed he did that before we voted on it, so
Yep.
we all made a note, I think.
Okay, that's done. Alright, we have a few. Let's go with the request to use town property Circle of Song, May 15th and May 19th, 5 to 9 p.m.
It's gonna be cookies.
Have a good night, Brad.
Once again, we confirm there's no conflicts for time. You guys checked? Just always the one question I will ask of that.
Is that all it is? Just the agenda's fine too? Or?
5 to 9 and the 17th and 19th.
Good.
Seems we had something on a Saturday, I don't know when it was. May 17th Thursday, May 19th Saturday.
The date's open.
The date's open,
That's why it's
okay.
probably.
I make a motion to accept the request to use the town property by Circle of Song for Thursday, May 17th and Saturday, May 19th from 5 to 9 in the town hall.
I will second that.
Any discussion? Call for vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. I'd like to make note that we received a letter from Ms. Elizabeth Garrett that was sent to Stephanie Young, the director of the library. Elizabeth Garrett is giving a resignation from her position with the library, indicating that she's looking to focus more on her future, as she needs to fulfill. Let me rephrase that. I'll read it all. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to work as library assistant at the Henry Woods Memorial Library. I have enjoyed working with you and other staff members. I appreciate the time you spent training me. I gained valuable new skills and greater insight as to the workings of public libraries. Also, thank you for taking the time to chat with me when I had questions, concerns. After careful consideration, I have determined that it would be best for me to spend the next several months focusing on a job search and my long-term career goals. Therefore, I am offering my 2-week resignation as of April 6th. The last day would be April 20th. If you need me to fulfill my hours for these 2 weeks, I am happy to do so. Perhaps we can take a moment to chat face-to-face for the sake of closure and goodwill. I would enjoy that. If in the fall, assuming I am more settled and you need a floater, I am happy to offer help then. During the next several months, I will need to simply focus on getting a full-time job and visioning a career path. I wish you, Woods Memorial staff, and patrons all the best. Thank you for providing our community a welcoming space with interesting offerings. I look forward to continuing to support the Henry Woods Memorial Library as a patron. As always, kind wishes, Elizabeth Garrett. I'd like to say thank you for her time and appreciate taking the time to submit the letter.
Agreed.
We have to officially vote on accepting that resignation, or is that just thank you?
It's Stephanie, I hear.
If you want to take a vote.
I'll make a motion that we accept the resignation of Elizabeth Garrett with appreciation.
Second the motion.
Call for vote?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have an amendment to a pilot with National Grid Solar LLC on Walnut Road. Have we had the chance to review, or do we have any questions on that?
That's not in the packet.
Oh, it's not, it was emailed to you earlier, I'm sorry.
Okay, I didn't know if it was, I can.
Yeah, all it was a change to the.
I couldn't open my email, so I'm not logged, this isn't logging on, they must have changed the password or something to do with the Wi-Fi, but my tablet won't log on either. I'll try it again, but.
I believe it's just a change in the interest party. Do you have a copy of that?
I did see it came in the email today, but that was, I got home from work at, 6:05 and had to shower, change and get here, and I don't have any time to, on this of the day, I can't go through and review it. It's just, it's too tedious trying to read stuff through that.
So I believe the amendment basically just addressed some of the, this was the same pilot that you guys had approved at the last meeting, maybe the meeting before. This had come in, basically assigns the federal tax ID number that was requested on section 19. And then, let's see. The assignment of the parcel was granted to, it was granted from Ingrid Solar One LLC to NRG Solar Wawinit LLC, basically just a change in corporate name. That's pretty much what the agreement is.
So carrying the agreement and just changing the entity in which we have the agreement with.
Correct. Yes.
The language is the same otherwise?
Yes.
Okay.
Same terms.
Any further, do we have a motion?
I can't draw it up to read it. I'm trying to find it to
No,
read
that's
it
fine,
properly. All right, I'll make a motion that we accept the amendment to the assignment and assumption of agreement for payment in lieu of personal property taxes under MGK Chapter 59, Section 38 HB with which company is taking over?
Oh, it's on page 3, I'm sorry. It's Wawinit, NRG Wawinit LLC. That's the assignment. There you go.
NRG Solar Wawinit LLC.
Second.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Nope.
Call for vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. We also have,
There's actually a sign-up page, I'll let you find it.
alright,
I got all that at least.
we have 3 new pilot agreements, one with Berry Wool Solar
Just
LLC,
signed by Matt, right?
Quabbin Solar LLC, and Quabbin Wind LLC.
For Matt. He's got a
So
pen.
these 3 were actually all, the town was in litigation on these, and this is the settlement agreement is for these pilot payments. It basically takes care of the remaining payments out to the town over the next, I believe it's 17 years. I don't think that top page, that was just some information out, but the actual agreements are those next 3 underneath, yeah. Those are the signature pages, so it's under the same terms and conditions that the Ngrid Solar LLC on Wawinit was, where it's, I believe it's a little over $10,000 per megawatt for the life of the agreement.
Okay. Yeah, I'll make that as the motion as you so eloquently stated. I'll leave it, we'll leave it at that. If that's all right
I'll
with you?
second the motion to accept that.
Okay. Did you get that, Faye?
I did.
Okay, good.
Any further discussion? Call for vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Then all inclusive of all 3 of them.
It's all 3.
Vote.
Were those held up?
We had charged the personal property taxes, they fought against it in court. The settlement agreement was that we enter a pilot agreement.
Just wondering.
Yeah.
I guess apparently this is
Buy the equipment, they
We
should
don't
be
wanna
taxed
pay
on
any
it
of
now.
it, so.
because the documents.
It's got a real value. Business tax over $10,000. Just a guess. Not that I've read the laws.
A year plus 2 plus 1% interest for like 17 years, because they take the amount paid into consideration. Typically it's for 20, but
That's the
they
original.
consider it back to the warehouse start date.
At least it's something,
Yes.
you know, that's what counts.
I like these really
You
modest,
can
it's
get just
more
a
money
two of
over
them,
time,
right?
rather than just getting it all at once and then
Yeah.
trying to catch the benefit at the back end on the recap.
So this is me
Right.
officially,
Of course, if you could,
Yeah.
if you could tax the
there's
real
an amendment, they're
property,
just
Yeah.
asking one member of the
You
board
know.
to sign, is that what this
and they
is?
say they put $1 million for stuff in there.
Just wanna make sure I sign in the right place.
2% a year, you know what I mean?
Sign here, as the chairman?
Yes, that one needs.
It's only got one because it's
Yes.
an amendment?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is one.
Those are the three.
The other three.
Should cross chairman out, just cross that out there.
Oh, no.
Just leave it.
What?
You were chairman at some point today.
I was,
Yep.
started the
There you
meeting.
go.
Technically got the
I'm
date.
just
Oh, and I was
joking,
wondering
Of course-
that when I was thinking of,
Of course, Matt signed on the clerk, and Charlie signed on chairman, so I'm gonna be vice chair. Is that how we're doing this?
go ahead.
What?
It's got all
I
three.
signed
It's got all
above my
three
name.
signatures.
You signed below your name, above my name, and the date's under
I
that.
signed it, Bob.
Oh, that explains why it's all messed up.
Does it, how important is that for the contract? Should we?
It's not that important, but you
It
sign
has all three.
on the line
signatures.
I'm at, I'll cross my name out, initial, and sign above where I should have signed. Do you have room to sign next to my name?
Sure.
If you do that, then I'll just correct mine and I'll initial.
Is
so
that
it's
acceptable?
That's
effective.
acceptable.
Sorry. I did it here too. I wrote my name as the chairman of the select board and now I gotta write my title as Matthew Irvin.
Today is
My
Yeah, so use the
apologies
sticky notes.
all.
April 17th,
I'm not used to this, Charlie. This is a whole new world.
2018. There's that one back. I'm dating them for you, so we won't get that wrong. Oh, getting
I
there.
think that paper to your right goes with that.
Yeah, that kind of goes with it. That's why I don't clean that up too often. Sometimes the
never
last
know
several
when you're gonna
meetings come
find.
up and yeah, well, I get so much at home still, but I try to keep the relevant stuff in there for a while then.
That gets stirred up quick.
Well, it's always heavy, it's always very full, it's so much at home. No real need to keep.
Okay,
those
non-profit
25
pilot
versions.
policy discussion.
Finance statement.
We
I'd
wanna
like
get
to-
in
I'd
that
like
tonight?
Yeah, I'd like to table that discussion, yeah, I thought I was gonna have a little bit more time to draft something on that, but, or at least go through some information I received, but
Okay.
I'll hope to have some stuff for the next meeting.
All right, we have two more items on the agenda. We have discussion on creating a recalled officials bylaw and board procedures for meeting notifications between regular meetings. Do we have a preference as to which item, or do we want to table one and do another, or what's your?
Well, the recall bylaw be very quick as well.
Okay.
The more I've looked into it, the simpler it is to do less with it. In the recall, this needs legal input to figure this out. This adopted by the state was the recalled article, I think in 1979. And it looks like the town adopted that article and then the state affirms it. It's unclear exactly how the phrasing is in it. But I had indicated that we shall vote to amend the bylaw as follows. And then in section, I won't quote the section number, in one of the sections it says that if the recall petition is successful, basically to paraphrase, and it goes to an election, it says that the recall candidate may run for reelection for the vacant seat. We added the word not, they may not run for reelection for the vacated seat. And then at the end of it, added a section, I think there was 6 sections, added a 7th section. I'm not sure, it might have been 4 and I added 5. But added a section that says if somebody's recalled from offices, then when they vacate the seat and they stay out of office for a term of 5 years from the date of the recall. So no other offices or appointments involved, no other convoluted anything involved, no other appointed or nothing, just deal with that seat.
Gotcha.
If they come out of the seat, there'd be an expectation that the seat says that they stay vacant from that seat for a term. The recall process is cumbersome, it's intended to be so. To get 15% of the registered voters to sign a document within 2 weeks is a challenging process. So if you go through it and you go through it successfully, and then the town comes out and has a large vote on that behalf, you'd like to make sure that that stays in place for a time. The second aspect of that Ellen had asked me to look into and consider, and that's gonna be very challenging, is having the concurrent election. The law that we've adopted allows for us to have a concurrent election, so we'll remove and replace. It says you can have the replacement election at the same time. If the removal is unsuccessful, the other election's null and void. If the removal is successful, then the person is in there and the seat is filled, you never have a vacancy. However, the timeline set up in the recall law with the states adopted say that you shall not more than 35 and not less than 25 days hold the recall election. The bylaws we have for our election rules, bylaws and/or state laws for election rules to fill an office, say that you have to have, it's basically like 65 days. The process to
30 more days.
to open the period to say, anybody who wants to take out papers, this is the open paper time, and then you have to set the time for the announcement for the warrant and for the election. To do that, the process is cumbersome and it doesn't line up with the state law. But since the state law is written that you can have a concurrent, there must be an exception that we have to investigate to discover what the exception is. Maybe it's because it's filling a vacated seat that we can go off the election setting rules. Maybe we can't, and we have to stay with 2 elections. But that part of it, the recall and staying vacate out of the, you're removed from the position and you stay out of that position. So it doesn't mean that one seat, it means that position. So if you're on a planning board and you get taken off the planning board, you can't run for another seat. You can't be in the position of planning board for that term. That part's easy enough to add in if it's mendable. And this is where we find out if it goes forward that the state may say, no, the state law, we can't exempt someone from running. And that may be the case, and that may be a dead issue. But I want to try to bring that language forward, and we can talk about it and hopefully put it forward to town council and let them vet it and see if it's worth putting on the warrant that way. But the best I can do researching is saying that the only thing we can really do, you can't get into other offices because other voted positions are elected positions, and that's a whole different recall. You can't deal with any of that stuff. Appointed positions you could, but what's the point in the end of that? You know what I mean? If someone's recalled, there was a focus for that topic, there was a lot of effort and a lot of consensus to make a recall happen, that office can stay vacated, and that's where I kept the focus on this, to make this more palatable for everybody. But trying to deal with the other side of it that I really wanted to be able to include was that the town and the biggest objection I heard from people while I did the recall, because obviously I did that, people that didn't want to sign it, didn't sign it for one reason. It's going to cost the town too much money. It's 2 elections. And it does run, $8,000 to $10,000, so you're looking like $20,000 to go through the process. If we could cut that in half and have it concurrent, that would be a great thing. But that's, we really have to, the changes to add the word not, may not run, is very simple. And if it's legal, it'll be vetted, it'll be legal. But to make the elections concurrent, we have to get into some serious possible modification of election laws. Possibly. And Ellen is busy with other stuff right now. I can't bug her on it very much. But that's the holdup for that, and we need to talk about that at another date. I'll try to find out from Ellen when she has some free time what election laws are relevant for me to print out and bring in here and discuss. And that's what I do with these. I print them out, I look at them, I read them, I figure out where it fits, and I put in the simplest change I can without making these crazy, because that's a conversation I was in on Facebook recently from a different town. Someone was complaining about these articles are so confusing on the war and who writes them and why, and then why do they say chapter this and that. Try to explain to them, well, when you make a law and it affects other towns, you have to cite them by chapter and section what you're affecting and everything it affects in the process, and then specific where your change goes. And you can research them all, but yes, it's confusing. And I don't want to make it that confusing. I want to keep it concise.
Okay.
So I think that proposal I'll bring in next time for the simple changes, and I'll try to get more information to how or if I think we can modify to get a single. I don't think the state would put it there if we couldn't do it. And it may be talking to, maybe I'll talk with State Rep. Donnie talked, I want to say it right, Berthium. I always say that wrong. See if he has any input on that and maybe can help guide me on why the state has that concurrent. If we can't do it, there must be a way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, but it may take some great changes that won't happen this quick for that.
Okay. Sounds good. I look forward to seeing that when you.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Next item, board procedures for meeting notification between regular meetings.
I asked that be on. I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page on when meetings are, between the meetings. Do we need a calendar or something along those lines? Some months it's not a very big deal, other months it's huge.
Our selectmen meetings, obviously, we all understand when they
Yeah.
are. The first and third, that's our given slate, that's our duty time, we all expect to be here. For other meetings, and my frustration is when they come up, you at times obviously assume I know or I've heard, and I don't. It's frustrating, but I think it's very simple that we could have an email sent out. You know, it's inappropriate for us to have conversations in email during our off times for meetings, or to use these devices at meetings. But it's completely appropriate when a meeting is set to notify the other selectmen. That would be the chairman now, would be Matt's obligation now, that if there's a meeting set for the select board to attend, that you should quickly shoot a message to each, as discussed at this time and date, we're gonna have a meeting at this time and date at this location. Simple. A simple email. It's traceable, it's enforceable, because I've looked into the rules of the state, and it is, you are supposed to notify the members.
Talking about meetings and agenda items.
I have to have been notified individually as a selectman, I wasn't. That is a requirement, and it wasn't done. So this also will give evidence to that notification. We send an email out, the evidence is there. You've been notified, you can't say, it's in the electronic data, which is stored forever. And, the only appropriate email for that is a town email, not personal text or anything else, just to our town email. I definitely check mine on a regular basis. Like I said, I got a lot of the agenda items today, but they came afternoon sometime, and I was like, ugh, I can't go through them at that point in the day. But certainly they should be sent out when they're formed, and they should be, unlike that Board of Health meeting we had where they changed the agenda that morning, that's not enough notification. If somebody was on that board and they weren't gonna make it, they'd be kinda ticked if they found out something got slapped on there of that magnitude, the same day as the meeting. You really need to give as much notice as you can. And I don't think that's an unreasonable request, and I don't think it's difficult to do.
Yes, I have no problem with, outside of the standard Board of Selectmen meeting schedule, if we set up a meeting with the Board of Health, or we set up a meeting to attend a planning board meeting, or whatever reason,
Right.
that we do that, even if we just agree the three of us are all gonna show up at Quabbin School and go to a school budget meeting, that we can then send out something that would say, hey, as a reminder, we agree to attend this meeting, here's where it's at, here's what time it is, please attend. Or we put in a link to that My Town Government that may have it with the whole agenda on it. So we're not having to make sure we rewrite it properly. In other words, this is how it's written and presented by the person running the meeting. Because we are limited in, like you're saying about what can get added to an agenda, without a more clarified bylaw, we can't tell other boards that they can't, we can remind them it's not a good policy to throw something up that isn't necessarily relevant to something already on, or fits a kind of an emergency agenda item concept. But it's really hard for us to actually say,
Do it.
do it. Even if you say it's against the law, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make them feel like it's against the law or change their ways. So I'm just saying, when it comes to something outside of our board, if it's not a bylaw, all we can do is ask someone to follow a similar thought process that we agree with on what should or shouldn't show up on an agenda, and how much notice it should be given prior to showing up on the agenda.
The open meeting laws are clear, for all
Agreed,
boards.
but that's again, a different board.
I know, it's not up to us to dictate the
Risk
board,
to take.
but I would be unwilling, if I think the vote is inappropriate, I won't participate in a vote. If we're gonna attend a meeting, we certainly say, we're gonna attend the finance committee meeting. If we're attending the finance committee meeting with the possibility of voting to accept the proposed finance budget, then we would say, we're gonna attend the meeting, possibly vote to accept the finance budget, the proposal. So we would post our intention to make a possible vote. Otherwise, we're just attending their meeting. So I would think if we are gonna attend a meeting, we intend to vote, we would post that we're going to vote. My concern for them was they did not post it to their meeting, and, you know, there are strong feelings of different people in town on this, and they may or may not wanna go to listen to the RFP when it comes back and see what the proposal is. They may or may have not wanted to be in the discussion. They weren't given the chance because it wasn't posted until that morning. So I'm careful about that. I think the public right to have transparency and have open meeting, I have no problem waiting to make sure people are told so they can be there. And I don't, you know, I'll always advocate it. I'll always advocate waiting. I'll always advocate making sure that everyone has the proper notice just to do our diligence. It's not our town. It's, you know, well, ours as much as anyone else's, but it's, you know, we're trusted to do the job here and do my feeling in the best interest of the town, not in our best interest, but the best interest of the town and things. And as I've said to Andrew before, if you think I'm doing something that really doesn't have a good interest of the town, then call me out on it. But I think that waiting on that is, you know, gives people the opportunity to have it, if they want it, to have the input. As far as posting between us, yeah, as long as we're notified to each other that we're going, and maybe even, sometimes we get random emails. I assume you get the same emails. You get invited to this event, you get invited to that event. If I choose to attend one of those, I think it would be prudent to put it out to both of you, hey, I'm planning to attend the event at East Oshkosh at noon on Wednesday. Because if one of you is planning to attend the same event, it just gives us the chance to say, we're gonna have two selectmen attending the event. So it's publicly noted that we're going. Not that we have to go to that length, because if we happen to show up at the same thing, we happen to show up, but
If it's more town business related, I definitely would make the effort to pass it through somehow saying,
so at least
I'll be
we,
at this, but if it's some random kind of social event that you happen to get tagged
No, I don't
into,
mean that. I
You can't
mean-
see all who's copied, I wouldn't think twice about telling you, and I wouldn't ask you to
Right.
do the same, because that's.
No,
like
I
you
mean-
say,
I mean
a
more official
nightmare
things.
of-
no, I mean more official things. And this,
Okay.
like I said, we can't have interactions and discussions of, oh, I wanna go say whatever about this, but, you know, there's a meeting on open meeting laws. I really wanted to attend that seminar, I'm gonna be going to it. That kind of thing, just so you
Yeah.
know I'm going to a seminar that's relevant to town government.
I
That
don't think you have to post those.
Not necessarily, no, but it certainly doesn't hurt to let the other selectmen know I plan to be there.
We technically
and
don't
if-
have to post going to like a budget meeting if we don't intend to participate in the
Participate,
discussion. But we do it anyway.
It's,
You know,
It doesn't
I can go
hurt.
to every finance committee meeting and you never have to post it if I don't participate in the discussion.
Well, we expect you to participate.
Right.
Oh, you
Don't
don't
get me wrong.
expect us to do anything,
I-
come on.
That's why we post it and that's why I do. I'm just
But, yeah.
saying, like, even, I forget what it was last week or the week before, I stopped up at the planning board meeting because I just wanted to see what was going on with, I think it was one of the marijuana bylaw items came up. It so happened I was the only one there, so I could participate, but had one of you, I would have just listened and sat back because we didn't post the meeting. So I'm just saying, those are the type of things that once in a
Right.
while,
And that,
if it
and
does happen, you know you didn't post it, just don't participate. And that's about the best thing I can say.
I can't see Matt or I going to these meetings and shutting up, so,
Right,
it's
so I
probably
would walk
smart that
away
we
and let
post
Greg
it.
have his chance and we'd rotate.
you know, so.
So that being said,
Okay.
do we think is that mostly what you wanted to discuss?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're gonna send out meeting notifications to these guys?
For anything not regular, I'll do that. I'll make sure Andrew's copied, just that way he knows anytime I do something like this.
The chairman sets the
We're
meetings.
not creating a habit, and he could call me out if I did something I shouldn't do. So, I'll do
I just wanted
it.
to clarify who was doing that, that's all.
For anything that I'm made aware of, I will do it.
Okay.
And so if we agree to a meeting in a meeting, a regular meeting, we'll meet so-and-so at another time, I'll make the note, I'll follow up with an email to make sure that
And
it's
that's
distributed.
what I'm
saying-
looking forward to. If the select body, if there's ever any two that decide someplace we're having a meeting with something, we make sure it goes across the email so everyone
And I'll copy
understands.
YouTube just because I'm sure someone will ask and you'll wanna know.
Because all of our meetings in theory are set by
That's what I'm-
Asking.
decision of the
Well,
board and determined
Maybe
by
the clerk and you can handle that, I would be.
the chairman.
No, I still like you posting them. I'll just help communicate amongst the board
Just
so that
between
we're
the
all on
board,
the
yeah.
same page. Okay. Does anybody have anything specific on a selectman's report they'd like to add? I'm good for now.
We're gonna discuss the CP's, the planning board's proposed bylaw, right, for the,
Which one?
about the marijuana?
That's correspondence.
Yes.
Well, I see the
Kind
bylaw
of.
was in here too, wasn't it?
But right, it was a proposed bylaw from the correspondent, not from the planning board.
Because I haven't had
Relation to
opportunity
the
to see the
board's-
planning board's proposed bylaw yet. I don't know when we're gonna see that, but
Yeah. When I requested, I was told they weren't quite prepared. So they wanted to keep working.
so
before
this
they-
specific came with the correspondence here.
Yes. You can see it's basically requesting that it be a by right use within the industrial district is what they're requesting.
Which they're stating is the current
Well-
industrial use is by right.
Right, there's not a lot of restrictions under the industrial zone, under what the current bylaws are. What the current requirements under special permit are very limited. But I know that the zoning bylaws that are being drafted by the planning board are very constricted in all zones, not including industrial. So I think that this is the counter to their proposal. So,
I don't know if,
One thing I do understand is there is a concern from CPC of the amount of investment and time they put in. Because of the time it takes, no matter what effort they put in, they can't speed up the process. That will this make it to town floor, get voted on, become a bylaw before they are actually able to put in the request and the permit through the building department to say, these are the bylaws on which we are operating. So they've done everything up to now based on the available zoning bylaws, originally as a medical facility, so it wasn't even against our recreational moratorium. They're concerned though that if the bylaws go in that they're asking for, it's actually gonna eliminate them based on their actual site and the use that they're looking to do. So despite all of their investment, it would be misleading for
can I
the
interrupt
select
for 1
board to
second?
sign a non-opposition and a host community agreement, and then later adopt bylaws that undermine the whole process.
Did you have a conversation with CPC? Did they call you? Because I had a phone
No.
conversation with some of them.
I didn't talk to him. I had some emails.
I had
And
a
then
conversation.
Then Catherine was in here earlier, and I am reviewing it as I understand it. If I was in their shoes, that's exactly a concern I would have, is we've got.
That's pretty much what they said in the conversation, was say, so I don't know if they had the same conversation with you.
No, I
but
didn't
that's-
talk to her. I just had a couple
That's why I
emails
wanted
back
to get
and
into
forth.
this. Their concern is straightforward, that they're gonna be exempt from their facility that they've been working at for so long. And I absolutely don't wanna see that happen, I wanna make sure that that doesn't happen. They've done everything proper, they've certainly put in their time and diligence in this, and we've worked hard on this. And I don't wanna see it wiped out by an overreaching, possibly overreaching, zoning change. So I don't wanna do anything until we see the bylaw proposal. But as that bylaw proposal gets further and further along, it's not gonna make the warrant if we don't have time to really look into it. It can make a special, it doesn't have to go, we have the moratorium until December. So we don't have to make a bylaw until later if we want, we don't have to do this now. And I would just say, if it looks like it's gonna shut them down, I'd rather hold off on getting it on the warrant and, work with them to make sure that it doesn't hold up this already approved facility by public, input in our time and their time. I think this facility should go forward and shouldn't be stopped by a potential bylaw change. Now,
Andrew, did you have something to add?
Yeah, I did get a chance to review, or go over the bylaws that the planning board presented, and going through it, I do agree that I thought that they were extremely overreaching, that they were very, very constricted, they were very zoning out, there were probably extremely limited parcels to where the operations could actually.
quasi-banning.
Yes, I felt like it was a restrictive zoning practice, as I went through. So I actually took the time to draft new zoning regulations based off of a more comparable community, along with a few other amendments. The thing is, the two proposals between CPC's proposal and the planning board's proposal, I think, are on very opposite ends of the spectrum. The downside with CPC's proposal is that it provides no opportunity for any type of review. It's just, we're gonna be there, we're gonna do what we wanna do. The town, it's an industrial use, we can do what we want in industrial. I don't think it's a very good practice to be in, even if it is our current practice. So I think that, at minimum, there should be site plan review, if not at least some sort of special permitting. So the bylaw that I had presented includes some special permitting, but I also included some new regulations as far as special permitting process that the planning board should consider adopting. And that special permitting process, they could go through line by line and say, did they meet this criteria? Did they meet this criteria? Did they meet that one? If they did, they pass it. The planning board should be a judicial board, not a opinionated board.
Not subjective.
So if they can draft some regulations that say it'd be a special permit, they'll fall under these special permit guidelines, they meet these criteria, they're good to go. One other thing I did include is if they adopt, at town meeting, they can adopt chapter 44, section, I believe 53G and 53G and G and a half. They can establish a fund for consulting by establishing a set of regulations for consulting and new fee structures that say that the applicant pays, I believe it's based off the square footage of the parcel. Basically, it goes into this general fund. The town then hires a consultant that works on behalf of the town at that, with that funding, and basically represents us. So that way, we're not being solely represented by one board that might not have technical expertise, where we're relying on somebody who has some technical site plan review expertise and giving some recommendations to the board on some of these bigger projects, especially in the industrial zone. So I've proposed that to the planning board. I have a meeting with the chair later on this week to discuss some of my proposals and see where it goes.
Little concern for the square footage fee for us to use. That's, the only concern there is, once again, we're trying to grow business, and if we start imposing a fee to even come try to get to talk to us, we might be counter-effective, but it's a good place to start and talk about and see what they think.
If
And get this discussion going, but.
There's actually two options in the regulations that I used, and one of them is, based off square footage. It's, you fall into this square footage, it's this fee, above this square footage, it's this amount. The other option is that you put an upfront payment of $500 to the town, and you basically reimburse the cost of the peer review.
Gotcha.
In any event, we need to see something in front of us before we get too far into discussing this, because we
it's
really
fine.
don't know. It did sound, from what Dean described to me, it sounded like they were basically, it would shut them down for sure. The rules, if they were set forth the way they proposed them, would stop their facility. And that's clearly not been the wishes of the town at vote, on the ballot vote, when they, by 57%, I believe, approved recreational marijuana use. And the state has been pretty clear that they want us to allow it if it was voted on in town. We may not have the retail sales, well, that would be, I think, fine with me, but I don't think the facility should be held up. So, there's no rush for this bylaw. We have the moratorium until December. I don't want to see this forced and rushed through and settle for something to stick on town meeting in June, and I at this point think it's very unlikely this will make this meeting. Because it's too far behind to start discussion. We haven't laid eyes on it yet. I just don't see any way this will make this town meeting.
It might,
It might, but
does depend though on how extreme to one side or the other. Is a little bit more middle ground
yeah,
where.
we're talking 2 months, and we haven't even seen a draft of it.
Understood.
And we're talking a month till it's gotta be done on the warrant, and we haven't seen a draft, so I just think it's unlikely. And judging from, like Andrew said, CPC's here, planning board's over here, they're not even close right now, so I just, but we have time, we'll have a special town meeting, I'm sure, in the fall. As long as we do it before December, we're okay to enact the bylaw and have it in effect before the moratorium's up. And
I
if
would
need
just
be,
like
we
to-
could extend the moratorium, but.
I'm just gonna take a quick moment, just to end that based on the actual correspondence sent. I'm just gonna do a quick, either reading or summary, depending on how quickly I'm reading. The Caregiver Patient Connection sent us a letter directed to the chairman and the members of the board. It goes as follows. We would like to thank the Board of Selectmen for their time and consideration. Over the past year, the Caregiver Patient Connection and the Selectmen have worked in good faith to provide Barry with the maximum allowable benefits this development and operation will bring to our town. The proposed project site is in an industrial zone and meets criteria set forth by both the Department of Public Health and the Cannabis Commission, the CCC, I forget that acronym. The project is, as proposed, is as of right according to the town of Barry's zoning bylaws and the building commissioner. We have received copies of the proposed bylaws from the planning board that seek to regulate marijuana cultivation facilities in town. We are disappointed to learn that, as written, our site would not qualify under the proposed regulations. Understanding that the planning board's task of developing bylaws is difficult and time-consuming, the planning board seems to have incorporated the most restrictive bylaws from towns like Grafton and North Andover. These towns have little in common with Barry, whether you're comparing population, land mass, or character. As a point of reference, Grafton is almost 3 times the population of Barry with half the land acreage, and North Andover has approximately 1,000 residents per square mile as compared to 120 per square mile in Barry. These proposed bylaws, because of their burdensome restrictiveness, are in themselves a de facto ban on all cannabis business development in Barry, and as previously stated, preclude CPC from developing the project. Given the increasing time sensitivity surrounding the development and success of this project, we are now faced with having to appeal to the wisdom and ethical common sense of the Board of Selectmen to mitigate this situation. So the Selectmen have the power and opportunity to present an article for the warrant that addresses these issues. We request that the Board of Selectmen present the attached proposed bylaw as an article on the warrant at the upcoming annual town meeting in June. Your board has earned the respect of this community as leading this town as it should. There's another opportunity to set the example that the Selectmen are serious about attracting good and responsible business to benefit Barry. Thank you for consideration. Yours truly, Catherine Trifilo.
And I do think, as we were talking about changing town bylaws before, if this zoning bylaw affects the applicant, they have the right to have us start the policy and forward this to the planning board. So we may be obligated to forward this to the planning board now that it's been presented to us by someone whom it will affect. We may be obligated to, within 14 days, hand this to the planning board for consideration. They may have to have hearings on it. As I understand what
Yeah, that's the
transpired last
process we
time.
went through on, what was
I-
it? Solar.
I think we're obligated to. They proposed a bylaw and it affects them.
So please, if you could, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, forward this to the planning board.
Yeah.
So
Within
that
the
they
next
take
14
the
days.
appropriate legally required steps to review and.
Could you just do that as a form of motion? Yeah.
I make a motion that we forward this to the
Thank
planning board.
Second.
Call for a vote?
Aye.
Aye.
And that gives them something in the neighborhood of 2 months
Thank you,
to have their proper meetings on it and do what they need. Doesn't mean they have to make a finding or say yes or no, but they can make their decision on it.
Yeah.
And at least it gives them the input officially back to the planning board when they're considering it.
Make sure.
But I'm pretty sure
Statutory
legally,
requirement.
pretty sure we have to do that,
Yeah, good call.
just.
We also had one more letter that was brought to us by, what's,
Oh, the ISO?
the ISO.
Yeah, you know what, use that for your consideration right now. I thought, Rob wanted to go into more detail with you guys on that because of the work he did on it, so. I think we thought he was gonna be in here tonight, so just hold on that for now, we'll schedule that for the next meeting.
No problem, and I know we talked about it at the last budget hearing too.
Yeah.
Well, finance committee meeting, I should say. With that said, reviewing the town administrator's report, it looks like we've already reviewed it
Yeah,
through all
it-
various agenda items.
The only one thing I wanted to add, it was actually on the last item, so I guess we had somebody lined up today as a volunteer that was gonna do some moving of furniture for us. They didn't show up, so parents, if you're watching and your kids need volunteer time, come on down to town hall, we have plenty of furniture for them to move for the new tax collector's office. We will sign off on hours, it's getting to the end of the year, so
Yes,
There you go.
hopefully see you tomorrow.
sounds great,
All right,
actually, yes.
that's all I got.
It's a great opportunity. Thank you. Last item is an executive session item. And somebody would make the motion, I guess. It's just the agenda item is executive session 38, section 21A, exemption 3, to discuss strategy with respect to the police union negotiation.
Make a motion, move to executive session as per Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 21A, exemption number 3, to discuss strategy with respect to the police union negotiations. And we will adjourn when we come out of that session.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.